Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about From Season 2, Episode 3, titled Tether. The episode's description reads as follows. Kenny and Ellis make a grisly discovery out in the forest. Boyd struggles with the reality of what's happening to him. The episode was directed by Alexandra LaRoche. This is her first effort on the series, and I actually dug into her a little bit. She is responsible for directing 2 episodes of Eureka, which is another sci-fi series. She also directed many episodes of the Arrowverse, Supergirl, Arrow, and such. The episode was written by John Griffin and Jeff Pinker, the usual. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. 1, this is not a spoiler-free video. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to our channel. Shoutouts this week to Latrice, who had a very Inception-like theory. She believes in the dream theory that many people have kind of latched onto, and it's even hinted at, like, in the episodes themselves. She basically believes that the likes of Ethan and Victor, that they're basically the architects of the dreams, which is why the creatures or whoever is in charge, or one of the forces at work here, I don't even know how to talk about them.
Yeah.
That's why they go after Ethan, because he's one of the architects of the dream itself. And that's an interesting theory. It sort of goes along with your drug experiment theory. I'm kind of hoping they don't go in that direction, because I kind of feel like it's all a dream, or it's a laboratory experiment. It's kind of a well-worn sci-fi concept.
Well, do you have an idea that is original?
For the show?
That's plausible with what we know already?
Not necessarily. But, I mean, I'm kind of hoping that these people who are paid to write these television shows might have a better idea than I perhaps do.
These people that hopefully will soon be paid more.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah. So that was her theory. It's an interesting one. Also, a shout out to Elizabeth Moy again. She plays Mrs. Wu on this series. She asked for the link to the podcast to listen to it. Whether she actually did or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're there and you're listening to us, Mrs. Moy, please say hi or something.
Yeah.
And hi to you.
We'd love to hear from you, and thanks so much for all of your support and liking and sharing our comments and all that good stuff that you've been doing, as well as some of the other cast members. This cast has been very interactive with the fandom.
Absolutely.
Which always makes for a great fandom when the people in the show are communicative, you know. The Frumily is pretty amazing. There
are several actors that I believe are involved in the Facebook groups, and they're active on Twitter.
Yep.
So it's pretty amazing that their level of interactivity there. Definitely more so than, say, Quantum Leap, for instance.
We get a little interaction with Quantum Leap.
A little bit.
But, yeah, this cast is doing a great job. And kudos to everybody who is so dedicated to this story.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's fun because even the actors don't know the big picture.
Right.
Obviously they know season 2 because they filmed it already, but they've been kept in the dark about the big, what's happening. So they're right along, theorizing with us.
That's a question I would ask them if I were to, talk to any one of them is, do you know more than we know? Are you told in advance, what's happening?
They've said in many interviews that, they only know what they filmed.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
they get, they're block shooting 2 scripts at a time, and that's what they know.
All right. So, Stacie, you have some thoughts before we get into talking about the episode.
I have a whole page before I get to this episode, so I apologize. If anybody just wants to hear the summary of the episode, feel free to skip forward a little bit. But
maybe an hour or so.
Most of the people listening to us want this deep dive interaction. That's what's great about this fandom is everyone here really wants to dig in, It's a very different fandom than our Quantum Leap fandom.
Right.
And that's what's fun about this type of show is it's all about the little details and how far can you dig as far as capable of the brain, because there's always another layer you can go in theorizing and all of that great stuff. The first thing I wanted to mention is last week there were 2 characters' names that totally escaped us. And I wanted to just come back to that and give some corrections on those.
I figured out one of them because I looked it up for this episode, and one of them is Clara.
Yeah, okay, so Clara. Bicycle Girl's name is Clara. Couldn't remember that last week. which we had just, learned that name this season. She didn't have a name last season, at least as far as was on my radar. So yeah, she's the one-eyed bicycle girl, Clara. And the way I can remember that now is from the Nutcracker. That's the only connection I have to the name Clara. And I find that interesting because Martin's music box has a ballerina on it.
So you think there's a connection there?
Well, episode 6, if you look ahead, which I know episode 6 is the episode everybody's saying.
Yes, they're all saying that episode 6 is going to be
now,
amazing.
Dave and I, we don't have screeners. We have not watched ahead.
Right.
So we're right here with everybody, which I'm actually happy for this one. Some shows I'd like screeners to be like on top of things, but with this one, I'm really happy to be in the same place as the fandom. It'd be hard to dig into these theories if we knew more than other people did.
Right, absolutely.
So yeah, episode 6, the title of it, which I don't have the title here, but it's a ballet term. The title of that episode's a ballet term.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and knowing that music's important, now we've got this ballet element. I'm wondering if she's gonna
factor in more.
I wonder if Clara is going to mean something to that storyline.
She definitely didn't mean anything in this episode. She was basically a plot device.
And I've got some things to say about her later. But yeah, just the fact that, now I remember her name's Clara, and now I'm thinking of the Nutcracker. And I don't know, I find that interesting to be, that we're suddenly like, what about the ballet? Because it's going to be something.
That's interesting. Okay.
And the other one was Jasmine's lover boy. His name's Kevin. I mean, that's not important anymore. He's very gone now. But I couldn't remember that name last week.
Right.
And the reason he came up last week is because there's a drawing of him in Victor's trailer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And it's hanging next to 2 other people, which I really think are supposed to be Mr. and Mrs. Liu. And I still think that means she's in trouble. And I'm really worried about that.
Yes, because we really like Mrs. Liu and Elizabeth Moy.
Elizabeth Moy is great. I've seen people actually postulating that she might be involved in shit.
I don't see how or why.
People are suspicious of Mrs. Liu, and people are really suspicious of her tea.
Yeah?
Yeah, because, tea is being constantly offered. And some people are questioning, like, is the tea drugged? I don't think that. I think she just loves tea.
Yeah.
And that's how, she's being hospitable, and that's how she knows how to comfort people, is just by offering them a cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
But people are noticing that the tea is being mentioned a lot. And just before we actually started recording, I saw a Facebook comment about, we've never actually seen her during the nighttime hours. So people are suspicious of her. They had to stop being suspicious of Tom, so they've moved on to Mrs. Liu.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't buy it, but we'll see, I guess.
Well, later in this episode, she's the one who gives Ethan that toy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
I don't know. Maybe we should keep an eye. We got to keep an eye on everybody. You got to keep an open mind about everything in a show like this. Okay, so some things I wanted to touch on, and I'll try and push through this stuff quickly because I know not everybody cares, and you're going to be totally lost about what I'm talking about.
That was a good one.
It wasn't on purpose. I want to talk a little bit about the Lost and Once Upon a Time universe.
Okay.
And how some of that's potentially bleeding in here. So we've talked before about how Lost and Once Upon a Time had some of this, same creative minds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not the same crossover of creative minds between Lost and From. It's a different cross-section of the Lost people. But I'm seeing both things kind of bleeding a little bit. So I think it's notable, if you are a fan of either or both of those shows. And I've seen people talking about Lost connections, because, those are a little easier to connect. And I haven't seen anybody mention Once Upon a Time.
No.
Other than us.
Okay.
So, first thing, and I did mention this in a comment on our last podcast, is in 202, when at the end of the episode, when the driver goes onto the bus and finds the bodies, visible sitting on one of the seats is a book called Crumbs.
Okay. And what's that about?
I don't know. It's a fictitious book.
Okay.
There was some discussion about the book, but it didn't lead to anything. Now, they could be just saying, we're giving you breadcrumbs to all of these questions, and we're sprinkling it in and stay along for the ride. But it reminded me of Hansel and Gretel, is where my mind went, talking about crumbs.
Right, and you did bring that up last week, too.
I didn't.
You didn't bring up Hansel
and Gretel? I put it in the comment of the video.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Yes.
So now I'm bringing it up on air. So last week I had mentioned Little Red Riding Hood,
Right.
Big Bad Wolf, with the house falling down on brick.
Mm.
And then this was like, oh, well, this reminds me of Hansel and Gretel, and that's kind of another fairy tale, once upon a time little nod, right? Like it could be if you're looking for them. And speaking of Once Upon a Time, if you peek ahead at episode titles, 210, the season finale, is called Once Upon a Time.
Oh, that's crazy.
I'm guessing it's more going to be like a flashback episode, and we're going to get some backstory on some of these characters, or on some situation, or on the town, and I'm excited for that. That sounds awesome if we're going to go back and get some, because I feel like there's so much story we are missing.
Maybe Jennifer Morrison is randomly going to pop in.
That would be fun. Yeah, I think she'd actually do great in this cast. But I found that interesting that Once Upon a Time is the title of the finale of the season, when, you know, I'm sitting here looking at Once Upon a Time connections. So you had mentioned Latrice's comment on our last video, and one of the things that she had commented on is that she hadn't realized that Lost and Once Upon a Time had some kind of connection. So I went and I looked up a list, and I've read this list before. I sent you the link to it, so if you could just pop that into the description for anybody who cares. There's a list of all of the Lost Easter eggs in Once Upon a Time.
Yes, that will be in the episode's description if anybody is interested.
So just kind of reading through that list again, which, again, I read it way back in the day when I was watching Once Upon a Time, but I was just kind of reviewing it and thinking about this show a little bit, and I came across something very interesting. A very definite nod to Lost.
Okay.
Okay, so episode 201, the season 2 premiere, was called Strangers in a Strange Land.
Yes.
And it's referring to the bus, right? Well, that title is almost identical to the title of a Lost episode.
Oh.
Episode 309 of Lost is called Stranger in a Strange Land.
Oh.
And that is not a coincidence.
Is there any thematic connection between the episodes?
So that episode of Lost is all about Jack's tattoo.
Okay.
Okay, so in that episode, most of Lost is about flashbacks and learning, learning the stories of these characters through flashback. And we see Jack when he went to Phuket in Thailand and got this tattoo.
Okay.
And the whole story is about how he got that tattoo, and I won't get into all the details of his story, but then it's revealed in the current timeline of that episode what his tattoo means, because it's in, a different language. And the meaning of Jack's tattoo is he walks among us, but is not one of us.
Interesting.
Which I was trying to think, like, that could totally be a clue
to
what we're dealing with in this season of From.
What's interesting is that a lot of people are suspicious of Dancing in the Rain lady.
A lot of people are suspicious of Dancing in the Rain.
She is the only one who is not named anywhere.
Still.
Right. We have a name for the jackass character, Randall.
Yeah.
We had the name for a dead character in Brick, and we have the bus driver's name.
We got names of Brian and Kelly.
Right. But we have no name for this Dancing in the Rain
Dancing
lady.
in the Rain does not have a name. People are very suspicious of her. People are suspicious of Elgin.
Yes.
Which I don't buy that. Yeah. So that was my thought is, could this maybe be a little hint that someone on this bus, one of our strangers in a strange land, is some kind of a mole? And then I'm going to use that word, that came up so much in our Quantum Leap discussion this season.
Yeah.
An actual mole, not just a computer AI.
Right.
Although people think that too, and I'll get to that later.
Okay.
Or, maybe it had some reference to do with Martin. We met Martin in this episode.
Right.
And even maybe we should pay attention to his tattoo.
Oh,
we didn't see his tattoo until the next episode, though, so that might be a little bit of a stretch.
Right. I believe his tattoo was like
a marine tattoo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was involved in a thread on Facebook where, we were kind of digging into the timeline of, well, when could he be from? Because some people were speculating he's a Civil War soldier.
Did they have the Marines back then?
That was what this whole thread was about. The Marines were a thing, and... I'm
assuming a very different form at that point.
I mean, sure. the idea of being tattooed as a Civil War soldier was actually a big thing. Tattoos weren't prevalent, but soldiers were getting tattooed. I don't know specifically what design his tattoo was. I didn't dig that deep. I kind of came to the conclusion that the term he used, Semper Fi, wasn't introduced until 1878 or 79, something like that, as far as, being the motto of the Marines.
Gotcha.
So that, for me, discredited the idea that he was the Civil War.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, it was just
could be a little bit later.
It was
still...
just this whole looking at like, well, who is he? When is he from? Like, is there some kind of super time jumpy thing going on with him?
Right.
Anyways, yeah. So Jack's tattoo. He who walks among us, but is not one of us. Definitely feels like a fitting theme to think about for this show, right? Because there is this concept of, is there somebody we can't trust?
I mean, there's probably a lot of people that you can't trust.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm going for Randall as one of them. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he's going to fit in too well.
Yeah, I don't think he's like involved in anything with the town.
No,
I think he's just kind of a jackass.
Yeah, basically.
And then this whole stranger in a strange land thing was mirrored also in a Once Upon a Time episode. That episode was just called The Stranger. Mm-hmm. And it was about August going to Phuket, which is the same place Jack went to. So that was definitely a nod to the Lost episode. And this title is definitely meant to be a reference to that Lost episode. Now, is it just an Easter egg to Lost? Maybe.
Right.
Or is there some clue in it? I mean, who knows? We're at the point where people are like, oh, look at what color eyes somebody has. So, I mean...
Yeah, that's quite a bit down the rabbit hole.
Okay, so speaking of August, character on Once Upon a Time.
Okay.
August is the character who is adult Pinocchio in Once Upon a Time. So,
interesting.
Again, Once Upon a Time is all about fairy tales and characters from this fairy tale realm who came to our realm, the world without magic. One of those characters is Pinocchio, who's all grown up. He is August, and this fact totally went over my head until somebody on Facebook a bunch of people on Facebook were talking about it. August is played by Ian Bailey. Jim.
Right, okay.
I totally didn't recognize
him.
Actually,
it's funny because I looked through his credits and I did notice that he was in that show when I was looking through his credits.
And then just...
Yeah, it just kind of like...
missed it when we were talking about Once Upon a Time.
Yeah.
So, I didn't recognize him. I think it's the hair. I have a hard time when people change their hair. But now that I know it, watching this episode, because, this came to me before that, seeing episode 3, I'm still on those notes. Now looking at him, I'm like, I totally see it. Oh my goodness. Like, of course that's Pinocchio. And I'm just waiting for him to turn into wood laying in that clinic bed. That happened a few times Once Upon a Time.
Oh, okay.
And because you had asked me last week, you said, well, are there any other actors from Lost besides Harold in this show? And
That's
I said,
right.
I don't think so. And there aren't so far any Lost people, but I went digging into all of their IMDb's because I was like, did I miss anything else? And I didn't find any Lost, but of course, Ian Bailey is in both. And Angela Moore, who plays Bacta, is credited in one episode of Once Upon a Time as a villager. So she had like a background appearance in one episode.
Which could just be a matter of working with the same people.
Right. I mean, that's the thing when you get into all of these actor crossovers is, creative minds like to use people that they have connections with and have worked well with before. Yeah. So you see that a lot, when you have studios that work with people and directors and writers and producers, is they'll tend to like working with the same actors, and you'll end up seeing sets of actors crossing over. All right. We're almost there. I'm almost at the end of the page, and then we can talk about this episode. And we're still in Lost in Once Upon a Time, just for a couple more notes. This one I had in my notes last week and didn't actually bring it up, so I wanted to bring it up now.
Okay.
In episode 202, when Christy and Mary are talking, Christy tells Mary, you can't leave the diner. This is when they're in the back room having their chat. The night of the diner. Mm-hmm. And Mary says, you don't get to tell me what I can and cannot do. Which is definitely 100% a take on a very famous Lost quote.
Okay.
John Locke in Lost, says, "Don't tell me what I can and can't do."
Mm.
Throughout the entire series, this is his mantra: "Don't tell me what I can't do."
Right.
And that's like his most famous thing to say. So this felt very like
very much like a Lost reference.
It was very much a Lost reference. And there was, these are all things I'm being reminded of reading that list that I'm gonna have you link for Latrice, was that the Evil Queen actually had a similar line in Once Upon a Time. So these are these things that, they keep coming back to as being like, let's nod to these lost moments that everybody recognizes.
Interesting.
And speaking of Once Upon a Time, once again, you said you knew a little bit about that show?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so Emma, who is Jennifer Morrison's character, she is the child of Snow White and Prince Charming.
Okay.
And when she was a baby, before the curse sent everybody to our land, they wanted to use her to help break the curse, but they needed to get her away from the curse. So they sent her to our world outside of the curse. I'm going too deep into this now. But the way that they sent this baby and Pinocchio, who would later be played by Ian Bailey as a grown-up, they were sent to our world from their realm, the fairy tale realm, the Enchanted Forest, through a magic wardrobe that was carved into an enchanted tree.
Oh, okay.
It was a tree that Geppetto carved this little wardrobe into. They were able to go inside the tree and be transported to our realm.
Okay.
Which is very similar conceptually to the faraway trees.
Right. That could be just the writers using the same concepts again, or it could actually mean that this is a connection between the two shows.
I mean, I would like to think that maybe this Fromville is a Once Upon a Time realm.
Yes.
Just like I like to think that the Lost Island is a Once Upon a Time realm.
Well,
I don't think we're actually going to go there with any real connective tissue, but I think these are fun things to look at as a fan.
This is one crappy realm that they're in. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of a scary one. It's more like Disney After Dark, I think.
Right.
All right. So those are all of my things before I watched episode 3.
Okay.
Okay, so
all right.
I think we're ready to kind of dig into the episode itself.
Okay, so what did you think about this episode, all in all?
This episode, I think it gave us a moment to breathe, right? Like, even all of the characters, like, even though some really heavy stuff happened this episode, and there was some really, intense moments that these characters lived in their moment to breathe, I still think it's finally where we got a little bit of a slowdown, and people got to reconnect with, characters that hadn't seen each other in a few episodes, even though we're still within the same 24 hours. I feel like it was just kind of a reset.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people didn't like this episode because it was slower paced.
Yeah,
they found it boring.
Not a lot really happened.
Right.
But also, and I said this about every episode this season so far, a lot happened.
Right. But for me, I mean, an episode like this is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely.
Like, it shows the psychological impact of what these characters just
we're getting to kind of sit back and reflect on everything they've been through in the last day.
So, for those complaining, I'm just wondering, what are they watching the show for? They just want to see monsters eat people every episode?
Right.
And
this kind of episode tells me something big's about to happen again. They're taking a breath.
Right.
Between disasters, and more's coming.
I liken this show to basically kind of novel-like, similar to some TV shows that every episode is a chapter, and sometimes you have less going on, but at the same time we have a lot going on. But I think you have to watch the season as a book.
Mm-hmm.
And there are going to be episodes that are going to be a little bit slower paced, and I'm actually all for those.
Right.
Those type
because
of episodes.
In these moments where we're getting to just see characters finally talk to each other, and even though they're really all horrible at communicating, it's when we kind of do start to get some answers. And we're right along with these characters of trying to get answers. And in this episode particularly, you can see everybody being like, we need some answers. They're in the same place we are, where they're so desperate for these answers. And, if we're frustrated, we're not getting any, that's reflected on them as well, you know?
That's another interesting point, is someone actually likened this series to being in high school. The first season, we were the freshmen. We were introduced to this world. We were with the Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we were the newbies to this world.
Right.
And now we are the ones in the know, as
Mm-hmm.
are the Matthews, for instance. They know what's going on now.
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, there's a lot they don't know. But
And there's a lot they all haven't communicated with each other.
Right.
And it's funny because it can be a little hard to keep track of, okay, what does this person know?
Right.
Because who have they talked to in the last 4 episodes?
And there's times during this episode I'm like, wait, how does this person know this?
Yeah,
Like,
there's times where where we're kind of being hinted at. You gotta kind of like look like, oh, that's telling us that this person and this person had a conversation off screen. And some people in the fandom are having a hard time following that. They're like, oh, this person knows this, which means, you know, they're a monster.
right.
No, it means they talk to this person off camera. We're
Right.
not literally going to see every minute of dialogue that these people have with each other.
I saw a complaint, which I think was half joking, about somebody saying, hey, how come we've only seen one person shower in this series? Like,
Oh, no, I saw a whole thread about that before.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, they're all so dirty. They don't wash themselves. I'm like,
do you have to
they
actually
have
literally...
running water. I'm sure they're washing themselves.
Do you actually literally have to see them, like, take showers?
Right.
To,
like,
to
do
know
you
that
do,
they
you do
take
that on a
showers?
sitcom or a regular
Like,
weekly
How
drama?
about going to the bathroom? We don't see anybody going to the bathroom either. Or we assume that they all been holding it in for, like, months or years? Like, come on, people. But, yeah, so some of these complaints get a little silly.
Everything gets a little silly, but it's proof that you have a passionate fandom that's
Right,
really
right.
analyzing it this deep. And
Mm,
sometimes people's comments are a little out there.
right.
And sometimes people's theories are like, what are you talking about, lady? But I don't know. Maybe we sound like that to people, too.
I'm sure,
I don't know.
I'm sure we do. All right, so let's get into it.
Okay.
The episode starts with Boyd in the bathroom looking at his arm, looking again at himself in the mirror. He basically looks very disturbed.
Yeah, and this is the same mirror that, you know, he was screaming in last season.
Mm. And we cut to Boyd talking to Ellis, which is interesting in itself because this is the first time we've seen the characters together since their reconciliation.
Yes.
And this is a very layered scene. Because one, Boyd has just gone through a bunch of stuff that he doesn't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Ellis has gone through a bunch of stuff that he does want to talk about.
Right.
And he wants answers that Boyd promised him. And he wants that because he's worried about Fatima, who, you know, he thinks that a little piece of her died
Mm-hmm.
from the events of last episode.
Right. He's worried about her, and rightfully so, because look at what he went through with his mother.
Right.
And you can tell here that we're really catching the tail end of this conversation.
Mm.
Like, he's like, tell me again, go over it again. So this is like one of those moments where we're seeing, like, yeah, conversation has happened that we
Right.
weren't privy to.
It's like, I'm sorry, excuse me, you went through a tree and ended up some random place, and what are you talking about, Dad? You
Yeah.
know.
But it's funny that, you know, you'd find that so hard to believe with everything you're facing.
Right,
here.
right.
Like, shouldn't you kind of take things people tell you at face value at this point?
Yeah, I would after a certain point. After a certain point, I'd be kind of bored with that. Oh, you went through a tree and ended up in some random
Yeah,
place. Okay,
cool.
whatever.
Cool, how can it help us?
Boyd tells him that he needs to be the piece that she's missing. That he needs to be there for Fatima.
Yeah.
And be the thing that
To
keeps her
help
together.
tether her.
Right. And that, going back to
Oh,
the
yeah.
meaning of this episode, rather than the rather bleak meaning that
Yeah.
we get later
All
in
of
this
the
episode.
titles of these episodes seem very meaning.
So they need to hold on to each other. In general, speaking, the town needs to do that.
Yeah.
If they're gonna get through this and get home. The place will not win, according to Boyd.
Yeah.
And Ellis seems won over by Boyd's words, and they hug it out. He's gonna go give Kenny a hand and pick some flowers.
Yeah. And Boyd tells him he needs to get a better ring for Fatima. So this is how one of those, again, the context clues. We know now that Ellis has told Boyd about the engagement.
Right.
People were confused about that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why that's confusing.
No.
Somewhere before we picked into the conversation, he told him, guess what, Dad, I'm engaged.
Right. I think some people just need to see literally everything
Yeah.
in order to understand that something has happened. And Ellis ends up leaving, and Boyd is back to looking trouble.
Yeah.
Credits, que sera,
Now-
sera.
What we also gathered out of that conversation is Boyd is not telling Ellis
Right.
everything, right?
Mhm.
He's keeping all the big stuff from him. He didn't
And-
talk about Martin. He didn't talk about the worms. He's keeping that to himself.
And for that matter, Ellis knows that. He specifically says,
right.
You don't want to tell me, fine.
That's why he's like, tell me again, because your story's, even if your story's radical and I don't know what to believe, I can tell you're holding back something.
Right. Basically, you just told him, I went through the tree, ended up somewhere, and then came back.
Yeah, and we see that theme repeat through this episode of parents holding back with their kids.
Right.
And really, you kind of all really need to communicate and tell each other everything at this point.
Well, I mean, to a certain point, it makes sense from a human standpoint, because your desire as a parent is to protect your kids. So sometimes that means making them feel safe by holding things back.
Both of the parents in this case, that are holding back, kind of think they're going crazy.
Right.
And maybe don't want to show that weakness to their kids.
Right. That makes sense. When we come back from the credits, we see the Matthews reunited.
All finally reunited, all four of them together in, I don't know how long since they've all been together.
It's been a while. I know that...
I mean, how long episode-wise? Still, remember, we're within 24 hours of, episode 9 at this point.
Right. Basically, the finale, I think, is the last time that most of them were together.
Yeah. They were all at Colony House, but were they even interacting then all together? I don't think so.
No, probably not. Jim was busy off doing his thing.
Yeah.
His wife, Tabitha, was going off to get herself
she only came to the house, to Colony House, for 2 minutes, and then she left again.
So Christy is taking care of Jim. He's being stitched up. He has some broken ribs and some other injuries.
He's got 3 cracked ribs and a bruised lung, a big gash on his forehead that she's stitching, but he's not turned into wood.
Right. And also, well, maybe he is, and maybe that's why he managed to survive the night. Christy goes and talks to Marie. Jim tells the kids that he needs a moment with their mother. And Tabitha starts to talk about the kids staying at Colony House, but she sounds like she doesn't really want that to happen.
No, she's like, I'm not going to take them up there after episode 7.
But Jim pretty much interrupts her, saying emotionally that he thought he almost lost her. And she starts to talk about how the wires aren't connected to anything.
Well, okay, so Jim's like, kids, can you give us a minute?
Right.
And they're going to have this private conversation. And the first thing is she's like, Jim, the electricity, the wires were just hanging there. And it's like, you're still on this after everything you've been through in the last 24 hours. Your biggest concern is the wires are hanging. Well, how about, Jim, I saw the monster sleeping.
Right. That should have been like the weed. She's burying the lead here. She would not make her a very good reporter. But yeah, I mean, a little later, Jim is going to tinker with an exit sign. Yeah. I'm like, Jim, what the hell are you doing?
They're super worried about this electricity, which I get it.
Right.
I get that it's weird, and they think there's a clue there, but it seems like there's more eminent stuff going on that you should be discussing.
Yeah, she talks about the wires, the situation, and Jim says, we have a lot to talk about, but of course we're not going to do it.
But we're not going to do it. I'm not going to tell you about the voice on the radio or, about how the house completely imploded, not just collapsed, very all supernatural-like.
Right.
We're not going to talk about the sleeping monsters or that caged child creature thing. But no, we got a lot to talk about, but let's not talk about it. I'm going to go feed the kids at the diner.
I mean, to be fair, I'm sure they're pretty hungry at this point.
Are they, though?
I don't know.
The point comes up, she doesn't even know what her kids have been up to. They don't even know.
Right.
Julie just spent the whole night in the diner.
Right.
She probably ate.
I mean, hopefully. Maybe she didn't have much of an appetite with worrying about being an orphan and all, but still.
Yeah.
Ethan, we have no idea what was going on with him last episode.
He probably was fed because he was being cared for by Mrs. Liu.
Yeah.
So she probably fed him at Colony House.
Fed him, and he also drank tea.
Yes, I'm sure he had some tea.
All right, so Tabitha takes the kids to the diner, and they kiss. Well, before they go to the diner, Tabitha and Jim kiss. So we cut to Donna and Randall.
Yep, outside the diner at the bus.
Still not named in the show.
Still not named, but we know his name is Randall. And that has been added to IMDb.
Yes.
They caught up with us.
They did. Maybe they got it from us. I don't
Maybe.
know. They are arguing. Randall doesn't trust the people in the town after the events of last night and wants to grab his gun.
Yeah, so he's got a rifle that's checked under the bus.
Boyd comes into the scene and lays down the law, suggests that if he doesn't like the rules, he can go out and live in the woods somewhere with his rifle and see how far he gets.
And Randall is really confused. He's like, who are you? You're the sheriff? I thought that Asian kid was the sheriff. Right.
Well, I mean, given how Kenny was acting in that episode, maybe you should have a clue that maybe he's not really.
It tells me, though, that our group has not done a great job conveying things to the newcomers.
I mean, they haven't really had time.
They had all night in the diner.
All right, fair enough. I mean, that kind of goes back to the fact that Donna is very much a blunt instrument.
But Donna and Kenny never even mentioned Boyd all night with these bus passengers, which could be a problem because that means all these new people, they're not going to recognize Boyd as being an authority figure here. He's like new to them. He wasn't there. They didn't mention him. So I feel like they're all going to, if they fall on his side, they're all going to be more on Donna's side just because she's the one that was there to
I don't think
doctrine them.
I don't think Donna is going to be
Donna
going up against Boyd at
Donna
this point.
doesn't want to be a leader anymore. That's clear. But between the fact that they're all going to end up living at Colony House and they don't really know who Boyd is, they're going to be looking more towards Donna for guidance. And yeah, she's not in a place to give it any longer.
Boyd ends up giving the rest a pep talk. And then they are taken to Colony House. We won't see most of the rest of them for the rest of the episode. In fact, Bacta is in the scene but doesn't get any lines.
Yeah, I don't think she didn't have a line at all this episode. I found it funny. Boyd was to Randall like, oh, well, it's my law. It's the rule. Residents aren't allowed to have guns. So listen to the lady. Leave your gun here. I thought their only rule was you spend a night in the box if you cause somebody to die. Didn't they say that's our only rule here? I
mean, I think they have said that in the past. But
so did he just make up this law because we specifically don't want this kid to have a gun?
He might. You might get the vibe that maybe I don't want this person to have a weapon.
And also from Randall's perspective, you're being told by this sheriff that you didn't know existed until 2 minutes ago. The law is you're not allowed to have your own gun. Residents aren't allowed to have guns. But here's Donna and Matthias sitting here holding a gun on me all night.
Right.
And who are they? They're just residents as far as he's concerned.
Right. Yeah, I would, if I were Randall, I would be questioning some of this stuff. And yes, he is a jackass, but to a certain extent, I kind of understand where he's coming from at the same time. Of course.
And this came up on Twitter. Actually, Harold Perrineau had tweeted something about, standing up to Randall. And I retweeted that, and I was like, Randall really at this point has burned bridges with both Donna and Boyd very quickly.
Right.
And my comment was, I just really hope that he redeems himself because I want to like this guy. I don't want there to be a villain character.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, there's been nothing that they have given us that suggests that he's a remotely likable character.
Right.
Like, at this point, if he dies getting eaten by monsters, I'm not going to care. So my wondering is, since he's a regular, he's in the credits, are they going to try to make him a little bit more likable? Right. Are they going to give him some humanity? Because so far they haven't.
Yeah. And by the way, both Harold Perrineau and Elizabeth Saunders liked that tweet.
Oh, good.
Thank you for that. Now, we also saw him walk away. He gave up and left the gun. He has an army green duffel bag. I'm pretty sure he's either active military or just out of the service. Between his crew cut, he's got an army green duffel, he's traveling with a rifle.
Makes sense.
So, people were saying, oh, he's past military. I'm pretty sure he's active. Active military or
young enough.
Or just out.
Right.
And I think maybe, like, if Boyd and him have that military conversation, maybe he'll step in line and recognize Boyd as, like, oh, you're a commanding officer. I'm going to fall in line now.
I can kind of see that scene coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. We cut to the kids and Tabitha at the diner. Ethan wants to go see Victor, and Tabitha says no because he's been through a lot, and so she for that matter. Ethan hopes that Victor is not mad at him because him and Jade were in his room. Tabitha sees Mrs. Wu. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah,
Mrs.
she's
Elizabeth
back.
Moy?
She took her rightful place back behind the counter. She made breakfast for everybody. So we're led to believe that everything went fine at Colony House last night.
And they go and talk in private. She immediately offers Tabitha tea. That's going to be the running joke that's just going to keep on giving.
Yeah.
Basically asking if they can get some of the supplies closed because everything they had was lost in the house.
Right. Tabitha had been looking out the window at that house, and Ethan, he just wants Norman back, his little finger puppet, imaginary friend dude. And I think that's going to be more important. I thought that from the beginning. We need to pay attention to all Ethan's stories, but remember, those finger puppets were even in Tabitha's tower dream.
Right.
On the stairs. So I think Ethan's right. He needs to go find Norman. And you know what else is in that wreckage? A talisman.
Yes.
They need to find that.
Nobody seems too concerned about that. They haven't even brought it up.
Yeah.
So anyway.
She says, I need some supplies. She realized she has nothing. They don't even have anything but the clothes on their backs.
And Tabitha, well, actually, I'm sorry. Mrs. Wu offers Tabitha to stay with her.
She says, you're going to stay in our house.
And, okay, so now she's going to have Kenny there, Mrs. Wu, Jade, and the Matthews
Tabitha
family.
and the kids. Now, Jim, I'm assuming, staying at the clinic, at least for a few days.
Right.
Which I was wondering, why didn't they all just stay there, the whole family? Because there's plenty of room at the clinic.
Yeah, there's beds, all sorts of things.
Right.
So basically from the sounds of it, if they ever do a spin-off series, I want to see that. Basically the Matthews with Jade and Mrs. Wu and Kenny.
Yeah, and
that makes
remember, there's been lots of, hostilities between Jade and the Matthews family.
Right. And the relationship between Julie and Jade is particularly interesting, given that we saw that little moment. So I'm wondering if that's going to go somewhere. You suggested was it last episode? Yes, I think it was, that Kenny and Julie might get together at some point.
Yeah. Or at least he might have been casting his net a little bit.
Yeah. Good for Kenny.
Well, Jade's too old for her. I don't think Kenny is, but Jade is.
Yeah. So we cut to Boyd and Donna, and Boyd asks about supplies. The situation is not good due to the storm, and I'm glad that they're bringing this up, because this is definitely a conversation point within the fandom. Like, how do they still have supplies? Like,
right.
How are they getting fed?
Right, and the answer is it's going to get harder.
Yeah.
We had, hinted at the fact that they're growing food before. We're seeing now, half of our crop is gone because of this storm. And this is the town, the forces pushing back. They were giving them everything they needed, whether directly or just by providing fertile farmland. And now this storm was, stop doing what you're doing kind of warning. And now they're in trouble because, they don't have as much food. They don't have, as much anything anymore. Everything's kind of falling apart around them.
Yes, including the people within the town, psychologically speaking. Donna mentions that the driver, Bacta, said that there were 25 people on the bus. Only 22 are currently accounted for. Now, this brought up some confusion. I saw a couple of people.
Yeah, a lot of people seem confused about this.
Yeah, it didn't mean that 22 people are dead.
Right. It didn't mean 22 people are alive.
Right. This means both living and dead people.
We know what happened to 22 of the 25 people.
Right.
And she actually said about 22.
Right.
Which I thought was very clever. Because in this moment, remember, we're still playing Schrodinger's cat about the bar couple.
Right.
There was, at this point, we know there's either 2 dead people from the bus or 4 living people.
Right.
If those 2 people at the door were bus passengers.
Right.
So saying about 22 are accounted for, it means we're not sure about 3.
Right.
Which falls right between the 2 and the 4, which could have left either of those answers still a possibility.
See, I did not even pick up on that. I did think, okay, well, 2 of those people are Brian and Kelly that are not accounted for.
Right. But specifically because she said about 22. And it also could tell us that the condition of these remains means they're not exactly sure how many bodies they found. They think about 22 people we've accounted for.
Right, they could have found an arm or something that could have belonged to somebody and then was actually somebody else. But yeah, Donna in this scene expresses regrets for her actions in this the premiere.
Yeah,
she specifically says there was a bus full of scared people, and I took out a shotgun and shot a tire out. So I'll have more to say about this later, but I like this little moment of kind of reflection from Donna.
Yeah, you can tell that she realizes she did not do a great job.
Boyd suggests that they are going to lose people no matter what, and to focus on the ones that you save, and he's absolutely correct.
Yeah, she got a lot of people into the diner.
A bus full of people drives up into this situation, a lot of people are going to die.
Yeah.
That's just the reality.
And, they didn't have the option of, the way Boyd normally handles it, because they stopped on their first pass through town. They didn't even know they were stuck in a loop yet.
Right.
Because, Ellis or Elgin threw up all over Brick.
And it was close to the point where it was going to be, sun was going to go down.
Right, they didn't have
a whole lot of time
to let them figure it out.
Donna asks if Boyd is going to tell her what happened in the woods. Boyd just looks at her with this kind of like skeptical looking expression, and then we cut away.
Yep.
Kenny and Ellis are looking for missing traps, and I'm assuming this is traps for animals.
Yeah, they're trapping animals.
Okay. They're not like looking to trap monsters
No,
or something like that.
these are animal traps for, hunting and collecting the chickens or whatever the heck they're doing.
Ellis, meanwhile, is just looking for flowers, which eventually ends up annoying Kenny.
Yeah, but he told us that's what he's doing.
Right.
Kenny missed the message and thought he was actually there to help him.
Poor Kenny.
Poor Kenny. I've seen a joke that's Kenny's new name. Poor Kenny.
Poor Kenny. I mean, it fits. It definitely fits for his character so far. In response, Ellis throws the Christie situation in his face.
Yeah,
wow,
like,
Kenny.
you could tell Kenny's being very grumpy with Ellis, and he's just like, you're just annoyed because of, the whole Christie thing.
Yeah, chillax, man. Kenny says there's a missing rod to the trap, and that's a little bit of foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
They hear music, and then they find one of the missing people between Kelly and Brian.
Yeah.
And she's got a rod through her head attached to a tree, so she's not in a good situation.
Okay, so...
Oh, also, yeah, there was a cell phone. The music was coming from a cell phone, specifically.
Lots of things to unpack here. First, I want to say, speaking, now we got answers to our bar question, right?
Right.
What happened to Brian and Kelly? We definitely got those answers this episode. I was wrong. I thought they were going to drag this out longer than one episode. But I had taken a poll to Twitter.
Okay.
And asked, and this poll ran between episodes 2 and 3. It ended before 3 aired. And I said, do you think Brian and Kelly are dead? Or do you think it was passengers at the door? Mm-hmm. And 57% said no. They thought it was passengers at the door.
Okay.
43% said yes, they were tricked by the monsters and are dead. So it was pretty close, but the majority of the people thought they were going to be okay, and they weren't.
Well, that's really sad.
They weren't.
Now,
and I kind of like Kelly. I'm kind of sad.
Yeah.
About her fate.
I mean, not to be superficial or anything like that, but she was kind of pretty.
I thought you'd think so.
So even with a rod sticking in her head, she was still kind of hot.
So yeah, Ellis and Kenny find her. Now they assume she's a dead body. I
would assume the same damn thing.
Right. There's a spike going through her brains.
Right.
And into the tree. And the song the reason they find her is because the song plays on the phone, and it's "Wake Up Little Susie."
Interesting.
Which hit me because that's one of my songs. So, the name I use, like my pen name is Susie Q.
Oh, yeah.
The name I use in my business, and the name I use online a lot. And so there were 2 songs growing up, that I assimilated with that, which of course was the song Susie Q and the song Wake Up Little Susie.
Oh, okay.
And my middle name is Sue, so that's where all that stems from. But, so I know this song very well. Not all the songs that happen in this show do I actually know, but I know this one really well. And here's what I have to say about that. It's set on her phone as an alarm. They show the phone, it says alarm, wake up. I don't think, from what little we know about Kelly, that this is her choice of a phone alarm to wake her up in the morning.
I'm sure it's not.
I do not think that's just her alarm going off because it's morning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fairly confident that the monsters set that alarm on her phone and then propped the phone up there to make sure she'd be found.
Interesting. Now, it's interesting here because this is a change of behavior for the monsters. Usually we don't see the monsters, like setting things up like this.
Right.
There's
clearly something very specific going on here, and there's clearly a message to be had here.
Now, some people saw this as a plot hole. I'm not seeing it that way. I'm seeing that there's a reason that they're doing this.
Absolutely, there's a reason. Now, we have hinted before that they do like to play sometimes. Donna told us all about how, they played with her sister. They skinned her alive. They wanted to torture her and make it last before they killed her. So it's not completely abnormal for them not to just rip you apart and eat you in seconds.
Right.
We have seen a history of, there being some more playful things happening. And that's what, we'll find out from Kelly is they said they wanted to play with me.
Right.
But I do want to talk a little bit, because of this song choice, about dreams and all of that, which is something that they're really pushing on us this season. I don't think we've really talked about that too much. So this song isn't about dreams specifically, but wake up, little Susie. We've got to go home. That's the lyrics of this song.
Okay.
And also I wanted to mention that in the song it says it's 4 o'clock, which that's one of the lost numbers.
Oh,
Every time I see a lost number now,
okay.
I have to point it out. 4 is one of the lost numbers. Okay, so the season 2 trailer is set to the song Dream a Little Dream of Me.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, that song's been totally stuck in my head ever since hearing that. That song I can't get out of my head now.
Kind of like K Sarah
Yeah.
Sarah.
And speaking of which, this is also a Doris Day song.
Oh, okay.
You know, as is the original K Sarah.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
the version we have for our intro is by the Pixies, but it was originally a Doris Day song, and Dream a Little Dream of Me is also a Doris Day song.
Interesting.
So either someone just likes Doris Day, or, I don't know, could that be more period hinting, you know, about our timeline of our town?
Doris Day was from what
50s.
time frame? Okay.
Yeah, like early 50s.
Okay.
Fits with our monsters.
It does. And also kind of fits with the architecture of the town.
Absolutely. But yeah, dreams just keep coming up. Abby thought she was having a dream.
Mm-hmm.
She cited a dream that she had when she was a little girl. Now Boyd's considering that idea because Martin, you know, put that idea in his head. Ethan had a dream when he first got here. He was still stuck in the RV. He dreamt about spiders and the Lake of Tears.
And then Elgin will later refer to a dream.
Tabitha had a dream about the tower. Fatima was talking to Julie about dreams and nightmares her first night when they were looking out the window of Colony House. Donna gave Fatima a dream catcher as a gift. And you just mentioned Elgin had a dream while he was on the bus. Victor thought that all of his memories were just dreams, and now is realizing they're real. And it's just like dreams. They keep pushing dreaming. Wake up, dreams. But I don't think it's as simple as it's all a dream.
Right, that would be a terrible ending.
I don't think that's what's happening, but I do think they're really pushing us in that direction for something.
Right.
And the wake up, little Susie, we gotta go home, almost makes me feel like something is trying to give them a message about something about getting out of here.
I'm sure.
But I'm saying I don't know if it's necessarily like some of the messages, like the storm and the house imploding, sound like stop right. Trying and give up messages. This wake up, we've got to go home. In addition to, say, the music on the jukeboxes, almost feels like an encouraging, helpful kind of message.
Well, yeah, we've said a couple of times already that we think there are different forces that work within the town.
And I think
I
think all of the music is a certain whatever's way of communicating. And I think that's probably a different force than the malicious I want you dead force.
Right.
I think the music is coming from a place of possibly a place of helpfulness. But then again, I don't know how that fits in with the idea that the monsters are the ones who set the alarm.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Maybe they didn't. Maybe it was the good force
who set what the alarm was, and the monsters just put the phone there.
Yeah. All right. So as they are looking at her, we went a long way before talking about this.
Sorry.
She suddenly regains consciousness, scaring the crap out of them. They're
trying to figure out how to move her body, right? And she breathes. And they just jump back. It was like, oh my God, you're alive.
Well, like I said, they made the natural assumption that she's dead, but she's very much alive. I was wondering how. Like, you have this big rod going through your brain. How are you alive?
And again, it's very intentional. And it's very scary.
Right.
To know that those monsters had the capability of keeping her alive.
Right.
And you know it was on purpose.
Oh, absolutely.
They have skills. They're not just vicious monsters. They have super intelligence that they were able to do that.
Ellis sends Kenny to go to get Christy, and I kind of found that funny because Ellis is showing more leadership than Kenny.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Moment. So once again, Kenny does not make for a very good sheriff or deputy in this instance.
No, they need to recruit some more help to this police force.
And, you know, my suggestion would actually be Jim. Because Jim actually has shown some leadership ability.
But Jim's, he's a engineer.
Yeah, I guess.
He's a science guy.
Yeah, all right.
Maybe they need to get Randall on their side.
Yeah, he is actually military, and we were just talking about that not long ago, so.
So if they can convince him to, stop being an asshole.
Yeah, that sounds like something that might be a tall order. But, I mean, eventually I think he's going to come around. assuming he doesn't get eaten by monsters. All right, so we cut to Victor arriving at his room, which is trashed.
Completely ransacked. We can see, and I didn't notice this when they were there, but Jade was not gentle.
He basically assumes that Victor is dead.
Well, he's been
Also,
looking for Victor for so long. I can't blame him.
At the same time, Jade is not the most considerate person ever.
He's kind of the most inconsiderate person you'll ever meet. But not purposeful.
No,
he doesn't even realize he does it.
I think Victor and Jade are kind of cut from the same cloth, as in...
Well, I have things to say about that.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Okay. So I'll move on. We'll talk about that later. Clara, whose name we couldn't come up with last week.
Our one-eyed bicycle girl.
Shows up just to let Victor know that Jade and Ethan were in the room.
Yeah.
Victor notices something is missing.
He does. He notices something's missing. And he wants to know. Now, Clara, I feel so sorry for Clara. So I think this is our only real scene with her this episode.
Yeah, I don't think she
comes up and she's like, Victor, I'm so happy you're alive. You know, we lost so many people. And she's trying to be all like happy, friendly with him. And it reminds me, if she had to try to have this deep conversation with Jade. Yeah. And everybody dismisses her. This poor girl, nobody will give her the time of day. And she's just like this sweet, I'm glad you're alive. And he's not even like, thanks.
Right.
He's just like, who was in my room?
All right. So, Clara, I would suggest you stop trying to talk to the Jades and the Victors of the world. And try to find somebody who's at least somewhat normal. If you want, I'll talk to you. We can have a conversation.
She should go be friendly with poor Kenny.
Right. We can go see a movie or something. Probably not in this town, but...
That's what they need, a movie theater.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, yeah, where am I? Oh, yeah, okay, so basically she's just there to tell Victor that Jay took his stuff, basically. And that's her only scene of the episode. We see Christy and Marie talk. Their relationship...
do we?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have them talking until, way after the Victor and Jade stuff.
Oh, really? Yeah, I have in my notes Christy and Marie talk, and they talk, and their relationship is fraught. Christy is trying to reconnect.
All this stuff happens.
Jade oh shit. All right. Okay.
All right. I'll talk, and you figure out where you are in your notes. So, we cut from Victor finding out that who was in his room to... He goes to Mrs. Lou's house.
Yeah, so he immediately goes...
He goes to Mrs. Lou's house, and we see Jade playing Victor's violin. And I'm pretty sure the song he's playing is Beautiful Dreamer.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
I listened to it 4 times, and it wasn't the main chorus, but I'm pretty sure that's what song it was from. I even looked up violins of that song to see if I could figure out what part of the song it was. And I really think it was Beautiful Dreamer, which... fits into that whole dream motif. And Victor pauses at the door for a minute. He's just listening to the violin music because I think he's enjoying hearing it, even though he's so mad at Jade for taking his violin. I'm kind of wondering
if this is something from Victor's past somehow.
100%, I'm positive. It's very meaningful to him. And he finally knocks on the door. Jade answers the door, and Jade's really happy to see Victor because he's been looking for him for 5 episodes and had given up.
Right.
And as soon as he gives up looking for him, he shows up on his doorstep. And Jade's like, oh, this is great. And he's like, yay. And Victor's like, ooh, I'm so mad at you because you took my violin.
Right.
And Victor demands he gives it back. And Jade goes, I just want to play it for a little while.
I'm wondering if he's compelled to play by the forces, the powers that be.
Yeah, we definitely get the hint that he knows how to play this instrument. And this is something from his life that, he's drawn to. But yeah, it seems like they're both very compelled about this violin. And Victor gets to get back and storms off. And Jade's like, well, wait a minute. And realizes, no, I need to talk to you. Chases after Victor with the journal in hand. Of course, he always has the journal close by.
Right. And he starts talking about the symbols.
Yeah, he's telling Victor all the things he's been wanting to talk to Victor about. Look, this symbol, and it has to mean something. And Victor just keeps walking, and he's like, can you please just frickin' stop? And he does. He stops, and he listens to him for a second.
And he says that this could be the key to going home. Yeah. Don't you want to go home? And Victor looks at him And a lot of the fandom picked up on this. Victor doesn't say it, but we kind of feel like Victor feels like he's already
Victor is home. This is his home. This is all he's ever known since he was a boy.
Mm-hmm.
Where else is he going to go?
Right.
And Jade shows him the Polaroid, and he's like, look at this man. And you can tell this picture's doing something to Victor.
Right.
And he's like, look at this boy. That's you. And remember Victor's whole thing about pictures. You know, usually it's his drawings, but in this case, it's an actual photograph. Pictures remember.
Right.
That's Victor's thing. And all of this stuff, you can tell, is so deeply repressed in his brain that, you know, he thought everything was a dream. His whole upbringing, like, all he knows is reality is what he is today, and everything else is a dream in his head that he's kind of slowly remembering. And I feel like maybe a bunch of stuff just came flooding back to him when he was shown this picture. And he definitely doesn't want to talk about it. He never wants to talk about anything, but he definitely doesn't want to talk about this. And he just kind of looks at him. And again, he chastised Jade for taking his violin. He goes, stay away from me. And he literally starts running to Colony House. And I also found it funny to note that during this whole conversation, like at the house and running away from the house, this whole conversation between Jade and Victor, you can see body cleanup going on in the background. There's this pair of like background people that we don't know picking up body parts and putting them in like wheelbarrows. Did you catch that?
No, I actually missed
throughout
that
this whole scene that's happening.
Wow.
And it just kind of like reminds you of our setting where we're at right now.
Right.
With all these dead people from the night before.
So it's interesting to me. Okay, so Jade ends up like yelling at Victor, well, fuck you then. And then he's like, oh,
yeah,
man.
He realizes like, nope, that wasn't right. Like they're having like a lover's quarrel.
Right. So I like I said earlier, I think Victor and Jade are very similar. And I think that they're both kind of on the spectrum.
Oh, they definitely could both be. Yeah.
Like Jade is really bad with people.
Yeah.
Like he's just so bad. And but he's bad in a different way than Victor is.
Yeah.
Like,
in Victor's, we know, like, a lot of it comes from the fact that he raised himself.
Right.
Like, the only person he knew for who knows how many years is, like, this boy in white ghost dude. We don't even know how long it was before more people came. And then whoever did come, they died, too.
Right.
Yeah, Victor's just kind of been on his own his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So the violin itself, you had mentioned, you know, maybe it means something. I think it was perhaps Victor's mom's. We talked about his mom last episode.
I actually meant when I said that the song meant something to Victor.
Oh.
That Jade was playing.
Okay, maybe. But I think that the violin belonged to his mother. Or maybe even him as a child.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, he was talking about his mom and her things. And I feel like this is just a really, like, important personal belonging to him. And maybe he regretted leaving it behind when he left the house. That when he came back, that's the first thing he did was look under the bed for this violin. And realize it was missing, and that's why he freaked out so bad. And I have a theory.
Okay, let's hear it.
Not a big picture what's going on theory, a character theory.
So not something that's going to take like an hour to explain?
No.
Okay.
I have a character theory. And this came to me while talking in chat about the violin. I think that Jade is Victor's baby brother.
Okay.
So, picture this. Jade's a baby. Grandma or whoever's watching him. The parents go somewhere with big brother Victor, who's like 8 or 10. And while they're off, wherever they're going, they find the tree. And end up in Fromville.
Okay. And then Jade
from Jade's perspective, his family disappeared when he was a baby.
Right.
We know he was raised by his grandmother in France.
Interesting.
And then later by his uncle in the United States. He never told us what happened to your parents. Why were you not raised by your parents?
Right.
They seem to have a lot of things alike. They're both drawn to this violin.
Right.
Maybe music was important in this family. The mother was a violinist. Maybe the grandmother taught him violin the way she taught her daughter.
They both have social interaction problems, for sure. Might both be on the spectrum.
And could the ages make sense? Yes, it could. We obviously don't know the characters' ages, but Scott McCord is 52 and David Alpace 42. They're real-life actors are 10 years apart. And that could totally fit with the timeline of the young Victor we saw.
How old was Victor when he came to the town?
We don't know, but he's a child, 8 or 10 is my guess. And that was probably 1978.
We could give or take a little bit on the ages, because
Right.
they don't necessarily have to be the same age as the actors are.
Right. That's just, a starting point to think about how old are these people supposed to be. I'm really bad with, like, ages of people, so I had to, like, look that up just as a starting point. But yeah, I mean, David Alpe, who plays Jade, he's 40. He's our age.
Oh, well, yeah. He's exactly my age, actually.
But it's not a stretch at all to say he was a baby in 1978. Like,
No.
that's just a little different.
It'd be like a couple years difference, really.
Yeah, which is totally, like, TV time. That's not a problem at all.
No.
So that's my new theory, and I'm sticking with it.
Okay, until we see it contradicted in some way, which I don't imagine.
But the fact that you were just like, oh yeah, there's some connectivity between the two of them.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I think there could be.
And I wasn't even making that connection. I just thought that they were very similar in, like, being socially inept to an extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mentioned many times that I would love to see a flashback of Jade in the real world, because I just don't see how he would have been remotely functional in that world to become, like, rich.
Right.
Unless he's not, like, new money and he just inherited that money.
Well, no, we know he's, like, this software, like, genius. So his brain's what got him rich.
Yeah.
And then, hiring people to implement
his ideas
and make it, functional.
All right, that's very interesting. I really like that theory. I hope it plays out.
And, as a Lost fan, this is the type of, like, connections I'm looking for, because in Lost, which, again, you don't know what I'm talking about, but we find out things like that all these characters are connected to each other in ways that they didn't know. They didn't all know each other in life, but they all were super connected to each other. Some in little ways and some in big ways, just like that.
And, it's funny. I recently decided to go watch the Lost pilot.
Okay.
And the one thing I picked up on is the fact that I've seen it before. I watched the first episode of Lost.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Way back in the day, and for some reason just
gave up on it. Well, the first episode is at face value. There's a plane crash.
Right.
Like, you don't get into any of the weird stuff until you get much further.
I don't know if I continued watching it after that, but I definitely watched the first episode. It looked really familiar when I finally sat down and watched it for the first time again. Any other things on this particular topic?
Nope. Now you can go on to Christy.
Okay.
Christy and Mary.
Christy and Marie talk.
Mary.
Marielle
is her name.
Marielle. I can't even get the name right.
Yeah, well, it's written Mari.
Yeah.
Is how it's shown written. So, yeah, I definitely see where Marie could be.
All right, so they're finally going to talk. Like I said, their relationship is in a very bad place. Christy is trying to reconnect, but it's not going very well.
Yeah. And Mary's playing with this painted rock that she found sitting on Christy's nightstand. And this just blows her away because this is something she gave Christy.
Mm-hmm.
And Christy tells us this is the item that when she got here, like, she didn't let go of it. It went everywhere with her. She held it when she slept at night. And, and Mary's just, like, flabbergasted right now. Like, how is any of this real? I don't know what's going on, but you're too calm. And how are you sitting here with this rock from, this past life?
Right.
And again, I feel like this little rock was Christy's tether when she got here.
Oh.
This was the thing she held on to from her real life.
Okay. So, yeah, that's very much a theme running through this episode.
Yes.
I took it to mean the more gruesome meaning, so I was taking it more literally. But
that too.
Okay, so Kenny. Oh yeah, she says that she's gonna go live at County House with the bus people because she feels like she just needs some time.
Yeah, she needs some time from Christy because Christy's just being too weird from her perspective. Like,
right.
she's not acclimated to this yet at all.
Right. So Kenny comes in and urgently says that they need Christy's help. I don't understand why they didn't take Mary.
Exactly.
At the same time.
Why are you not bringing her? She is a nurse. She's the only other medical professional in this place. Bring them both.
I'm sure she would have been at least somewhat helpful in this situation.
I mean, she wouldn't have been any less helpful than the people that were there.
Right. Okay, so we cut to Ellis and Kelly, and they talk. I'm kind of curious, can Kelly see at this point?
I was questioning that too. I saw people say, oh, well, she lost her vision. I don't think that's the case. I think it was just a matter of she can't move her head at all. So unless you're directly in front of her, she can't see. So when he's sitting off to the side, like over here, she's like, are you still there?
Right.
Because she couldn't see him
Mm-hmm.
unless he's literally in front of her eyes.
There were also a few moments that seemed like she wasn't able to see unless they were.
I went back and forth with that, but I mean, I think it just comes down to like all of her senses are kind of impaired.
I mean,
she's in a really kind of crazy place right now.
Yeah, she has a spike going into her brain, so to expect her to have total brain function at this point would be a little bit absurd.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's probably having some issues for sure at this point.
So she tells Ellis it doesn't hurt. You know, that's got to be bad, right? Like she knows.
She's in shock, as you would be if you had a spike going through your head. Like I think that's a good part of the reason why she doesn't feel pain. But also, she's probably, dying.
You know what I feel is unrealistic about this, on top of, the fact that monsters were able to pin her to a tree and keep her alive? If you woke up like that and you don't feel pain, and you know you can't move, wouldn't your instinct be to force yourself to move, or to grab at it, or to do something that was going to cause you to die really quickly?
I assume that would be the case.
When you woke up and panicked, realizing you can't move, but you also can't feel it.
Right. I think my first instinct would be to try to get away from that situation.
Right.
And that would probably cause your death.
Of course. So I feel like it's a little unrealistic. I know nothing should feel unrealistic, but
I mean,
it's a little unrealistic that she just sits there and is like, I don't feel anything.
Unless there's a reason or some kind of force controlling that. Maybe that force was keeping her alive in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they end up talking. She ends up talking about what happened to them.
Right, and we get this little kind of like flashbacky scene of when Brian opened the door. So that was the last we saw of them, as he was turning the door. Now we see, yes, it was monsters at the door. 2 monsters we've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So the female, she was part of the colony house invasion.
Okay.
And the boy, he's the one that was talking to Julie on her first night.
Oh, okay.
When they were first going into Colony House and the monsters came up on the porch and he was like, Julie, don't you recognize me? That was him.
Okay, so he's still in that form? Because I thought he would be in that form to screw with Julie specifically.
No, see, I don't think that he's actually somebody she should recognize.
Okay, so that was
I think that was the same way Grandma was like, I'm your grandma, let me in.
Right.
And, Megan was like, you don't look like my grandma.
Oh, okay.
I think that's just them screwing with them, like, hey, don't you know who I am?
I thought they were, like, shape-shifting to be like people that
I don't see it that way.
Okay.
I see it just as, mind tricks, like, hey, don't you know me? You should know me.
Right.
And then the person's like, wait, do I know you? And then they're going to trust them.
Right. So, yeah, they end up basically dragging them to the woods. They tortured and killed Brian in front of Kelly.
Yeah, made her watch.
And then put her into the situation that she's currently in.
Yeah, they told her they wanted to play with her.
And then she starts getting a little upset when she starts remembering this. Kenny and Christy come back, and Christy examines her using an excellent bedside manner. I think I would just be freaking out the minute I saw her.
Yeah, and I feel really bad for Christy. Like,
yeah. Did
you really need to bring her here? Did you really think there was anything she could do to help?
I mean, maybe there was a chance, and they had to try.
Yeah,
from
but
their
like,
perspective.
God, this had to be hard for Christy. Like, we know later how hard it was for her, but definitely. Even at this moment, like, to know you, a medical student, she's not even a doctor yet.
Right.
Are now, like, being told, hey, here's somebody that's about to die. Can you save him?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's rough on her, but at the same time, I can't really blame Kenny and Ellis for doing this. Because I think maybe they think that there's a chance that she can be saved.
But Christy knows pretty quickly, like, this is pretty bad.
Yeah, so we cut to Jim, and he's,
he gets out of bed, even though Christy had told him not to.
And I'm like, Jim, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He gets a chair.
3 cracked ribs, come on.
He gets a chair. Jim, what the hell are you doing? He gets on the chair. Jim, what the hell are you doing? Like, the entire time, like, watching him going, what the hell, Jim?
Yeah.
And he's playing around with the
He climbs up the chair,
sign.
And he's playing with the exit sign that's on top of the doorway. And so the exit sign had flickered. It did that light flicker thing that we always see the lights doing. And I'm sure it made him remember, oh yeah, we're supposed to be studying the electricity. And that engineer in him was like, I gotta know. So I don't know what he thought he was actually gonna find, though, climbing up and looking at the little exit sign.
I don't know. The last time you investigated this issue, it didn't end so very well for you. So, what the heck, Jim?
And I don't think you should be climbing on a chair right now.
With 3 cracked ribs. Like, what in the world, man? All right, so Dancing in the Rain lady comes in looking for Christy.
She walks in and she's looking for Christy, and we never found out, what does she want Christy for?
Maybe she needs some medication or something.
We never found out what she's looking for Christy for, and that's my biggest question. I want to know, what are you doing here, lady?
This scene actually made some of the fandom like really suspicious of this character, more so than they already were. She knows him as the person that got stuck in a house somehow.
Yeah,
like, I don't know how she made that connection.
Well, I guess just because he was really hurt.
Yeah, I guess
she's
so.
like, oh, you're the guy that was stuck under the house. And she starts talking about Brick.
Right.
And she's like, he was sitting across the aisle from me on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's nice.
Right. Jim ends up asking, where were you going?
Yeah, she's like, I'll just leave you. She realizes he's being super weird and she doesn't want to be here. She's like, I'll just leave you to it.
Right.
While you're, playing with that sign, clearly like dying when you're standing up on a chair. And he's like, no, he stops her. He doesn't want her to leave. And he says, who are you? Where were you going on the bus? I want to know, where was the bus going?
Was it a charter?
Because nobody's asked the people on the bus yet, what's going on with this bus? Who are you people?
Right. And basically asked if it was a charter bus, and, she doesn't know any of these questions.
She's just like, I was going to the racetrack. I've been touring racetracks all over the country to bet on the horses. I don't know, it was a bus. Like, I bought a ticket and I got on the bus.
And then he asks, what's in your bag?
Yeah, so she has a fanny pack that she's been wearing. And in this scene, she's clutching it in her chest. She took it off of her waist, and she's holding it against her chest. So it does look a little weird.
At the same time, it's a very kind of rude question from Jim.
Yeah, right. And I guess it makes more sense to him being in this town and being where, like, I need to be suspicious of people. Like, we need to all know everything that everybody's doing, even though we don't know how to communicate.
Right.
But yeah, to say the lady, what's in your bag? It was weird.
Right.
And I don't think her response, which was, you ask a lot of questions, was weird of her.
No, I thought that was a normal response.
Yeah, but people, like you said, people are suspicious of her because she doesn't want to share what's in her bag. And people were speculating maybe
it's a personal question.
Maybe it's just a lot of money in her bag and she's clutching it because there's this weird man standing here.
Right.
And, she hasn't made the connection yet that money is useless now.
Right.
Because she was going to the track.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Or maybe whatever in the bag is something she wanted to bring to Christy.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So he says he has just one more, and I don't think he ever even asked that question. He ends up falling over in pain. Marie comes out to help him after the lady calls for him, and Maria says, "Hey, you're not supposed to be leaving bed." And Jim's like, "Who are you? I haven't seen you before."
Who the hell are you?
Right.
Which, he was laying in bed when she walked in earlier. He must not have been paying attention.
I guess not. Maria goes off to get some.
Mary.
Sorry,
Mary.
I'm gonna get her name.
Mary. Quite contrary.
She goes off to get aspirin, and Dancing in the Rain lady tells Jim that Christy and Marie are engaged. This is one of those moments where I'm like, how the hell does she know that?
Well, because they all spent the night in the diner together.
Right.
Now, Dancing in the Rain, I think she's pretty perceptive. She's one of those people that pays attention. She's listening to everything.
Gotcha.
And I think people are suspicious of her. I don't know if I am. I think maybe she's somebody who gathers information, and you should go to her for answers because she's, I think, one of those people that's just going to be putting it all together.
Right, basically sitting back and watching and then, kind of like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and Jim hadn't heard yet that Christy's fiancé is here, and he's very perplexed to know. And I don't know if we mentioned it, but earlier when Boyd and Donna were talking, they had also made note of how peculiar it was that Christy's fiancé showed up. And for all of these characters, I think perhaps this is the first time that they're thinking, was it not just random that we ended up here?
I can't even imagine a scenario in which it would be like random.
Right.
Like, this is very much intentional.
Like, it's us viewers. Right. Like, we're like, yeah, like, obviously there's something intentional happening. But to all of them, I think they're just kind of for the first time pondering that. I
mean, to be fair to them, they haven't had a whole lot of time to ponder any of this. Like, they've spent like the first couple episodes being in this really tense situation.
Well, Donna's been here for 3 years though.
Right.
And I kind of got the idea when she says, yeah, I don't think that's ever happened before, like a loved one coming, is maybe she hadn't really thought of this before. Maybe I was picked for some reason. Maybe there's some design here.
Right.
And I really think that the wheels are spinning on all of them about that particularly. Like, what are the implications of somebody's loved one showing up?
Mm.
It's not coincidence. It can't just be coincidence.
Right. So we cut to Fatima and Elgin at County House, and Elgin asks if there's any water nearby. Elgin asks to see it, and after he gets a yes answer, and this is the little pond area that we saw.
Brundles.
The Brundles.
And it's clear right away he must have saw water in his dream.
Right. And he actually even says it.
Yeah, he does say that a little while later, but it's clear right away. He must have saw the Brundles, and that tells me something's going to happen here this season.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going to happen at the Brundles because he had this horrific dream that made him say, do not stop here.
Right.
And now he says, yeah, I saw the water in my dream. So something's going to happen there. Something big. I think people are going to die in this water.
It's interesting. Elgin is in the same vein as Victor and Ethan.
Yeah.
As being in the know. He seems, I'm not sure if he's like similar to them in mentally. Like, is he like on the spectrum, or is he like basically normal or not? I wouldn't say normal, but average in his abilities, mental abilities. Like I'm not sure either way. His performance, the way he's been so far.
We don't know a lot about
Right.
Elgin yet, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like he's another one to watch.
Mm.
Like, he's somebody who could give us answers, and not necessarily just about his dream.
Mm.
But I feel like, again, he's someone who is observant.
Yeah.
Someone who's putting pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who, once he has a little bit of time here, might really figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts asking questions, like the kind of questions that people should be asking that I feel like they don't ask.
Well, I think a lot of the old guard have asked these questions
right.
in the past.
And Fatima talks about that. Like, yeah, we've all done this, but it's not something we've seen a lot, in this new iteration of people. Like our season 1 people that came in, they're asking, how's the electricity get here? But they're not asking like more basic questions. They're not asking other people questions.
Right.
But he says, why is it called the Brundles? And I think that's an important question. It feels really insignificant, but I feel like it's important. And I remember the first time we were introduced to this place when Fatima and Ellis brought Julie here, and there were a lot of people playing there that day. By the way, you can see the difference, how the different, things have changed.
Yeah.
That was just people playing there. You saw that as like an average everyday thing, as a bunch of people from Colony House just hanging out in the water. And now the climate of today, nobody's there.
Right.
Everybody's, preoccupied with real life. Their real life, monster situation.
Right.
As opposed to Colony House that was just kind of like whatever before, blasé about it. So yeah, why is it called the Brundles? I had questioned that back in season 1. What does Brundles mean? I looked it up. Is that like a type of body of water? Like, what's this word? And I didn't know, and I didn't really come to any answers back then. And for him to ask it, I'm like, oh, that maybe is a question. Maybe I was on the right track of wondering why is it called the Brundles. And I saw a lot of people talking about the word Brundles and what it could possibly mean. People were talking about The Fly, the movie The Fly. The doctor was named Brundle, and Urban Dictionary says throwing up on someone is called a Brundle because that happened with Dr. Brundle in The Fly.
Okay.
And that happened with Elgin on the bus. He threw up. And I saw people like finding the meaning of the last name Brundle, which had something to do with land. So that's interesting. But one theory that I pulled up on, not necessarily his theory, but one thing that made me kind of like, oh wait, that's interesting, is a Facebook user, Mad Dog, who actually reached out and said that he's listening to our podcast. So thank you. Yes. And
I should have given you an opportunity to shout him out at the start.
Well, I knew I was going to get to it here.
Okay.
So Mad Dog is listening, and he participates in all the Facebook forums and has lots of crazy theories, like we all do. And he pointed out to me that Brundles is actually the name of an old Atari game.
Interesting. Okay.
And what that game is basically a knockoff of the Lemmings.
Okay.
And when you stop and look at what is the Lemmings.
Lemmings is a game that came after that of its Atari.
These were like around the same time.
Okay.
This was like, different companies make like the same game. Like
gotcha.
Everybody did that back then, or they still do that really, like phone games.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically the same thing as Lemmings.
Okay.
And it's called Brundles. And think about what the lemmings are, right? You as the player are trying to use these little creatures and oftentimes sacrificing many of them in an attempt to save as many of them as possible.
All right.
And you use them and you manipulate the environment, and you know, some of them can dig holes and some of them can climb ladders, and they have these different roles you can assign to them.
Right.
And you have to figure out how to help the lemmings, who are really just unintelligent nothings, overcome the environment and escape it.
Interesting.
Which, when you look at those words, and he had posted, the actual like definition of the lemmings game, it's like, wow, you can kind of see like where our characters are kind of like in a similar situation to the lemmings.
Yeah, okay.
And he has, this idea that there's that this world is some kind of AI controlled video game.
Okay.
And linked that into talking about the lemmings. And I don't know if I follow that whole theory. It might go a little bit over my head, so I'm not going to get too detailed into it. But he suggested that the AI are using nanites and they're controlling the monsters, and that they are playing some kind of game to manipulate the people. And like, maybe, I don't know, one force is trying to help the people escape the way you help lemmings escape.
So are the people themselves real in this theory, or?
Yeah, the people themselves are, I think that's how I'm looking at it, that the people are real and AI is playing with the people.
Well, that's not good.
The way that, a player would play with the lemmings.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But there's stuff there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
And
that's interesting.
On a similar note, I was, the theory was going through my head, and not necessarily dealing with this particular, like, Brundle's thing. But I was thinking, maybe this whole place, and this, it's something people have tossed around, but like that it's just some kind of VR video game or experiment. And I was questioning, like, what if it's a game that people voluntarily are playing? But part of this game, this VR game, is that you're going to be in some kind of drug-induced state where you're going to forget your memories and you're not going to know you're playing this game, but you signed up for it, you consented to it, and it's all just a game.
Interesting.
An escape game.
So if you die, you just go back to your regular life?
Right. Like Abby thought.
Yeah. So maybe Abby was onto something when it comes down to it.
I don't know if there's any particular reason I was thinking that, but I was like, that could be interesting, like, oh, it's a video game, but not that you're trapped inside a video game, but that, like, you put yourself there. That's
definitely a spin on the well-worn sci-fi idea. So.
Yeah. So, like, just to go off a little bit on the random thoughts I was having about this when I was thinking it, like, maybe it's Jade's company that built it. And him coming into the game was him going into beta test. He's like, okay, let me see if I can figure it out, because maybe it's too easy.
Right.
So send me in. Let me see how I do.
Okay.
And maybe Jim is there because, he's a theme park engineer. Maybe he's testing it out for this theme park he works for, and they're thinking about implementing this ride, this, game as a thing in their amusement park.
And maybe he just involved his entire family at the same time.
Yeah. Or maybe it's being used as some form of therapy.
Okay. Right. As a result of they need they're getting therapy for the fact that their son died.
Right. And Father Kotry's getting therapy for, dealing with the trauma he faced, and Fatima had this trauma for father being killed, and
So I'm kind of curious, if you die, does that mean you've overcome your trauma?
No, I think you start over because you failed. When you die in a video game, you just try again.
Gotcha.
Your goal's not to die, your goal's to escape.
Okay.
Jade thought it was an escape room. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a virtual escape room.
So somewhere Father Kotry is playing the game still.
Yeah, but not in this save. He's in a different save because he had to try again.
Right. Do you play with the same people in this scenario, or are you just getting a whole net?
Yeah, I don't know. You're going a little deep now, okay?
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So good stuff from Mad Dog. And if you want to keep sharing theories for us, comment on the videos or send me messages, whatever. That's great. We will continue to discuss them.
All right. So, so she ends up saying that yes, people have obsessed with all. Like everything that's been going on. They've been trying to put the pieces together forever.
Yeah, and she talks about a former resident named Nadia, who we have to assume has died. And Nadia had this theory that the place is calling out to them, but only certain people are listening closely enough to hear.
Which I would have to assume is the Victors.
The people who are actually getting messages.
And the Elgins.
And, comparing that to the meta idea of us. Excuse me, the meta idea of us, those of us digging into the show. You've got the people just kind of watching the show at face value. Like my mom, who's going to watch the show, but doesn't dig any deeper, doesn't have any theories, isn't listening to a podcast. And then you have the crazy people like us that sit here and make 12 pages of notes about it.
You mean she's not going to listen to a 3-hour podcast on this?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
But it's that same kind of thing. Like some people are just paying closer attention, and they're the ones who are maybe catching these little details. And she said we came to the conclusion every time, though, that we don't know anything. And that's right where we are. We can theorize all we want, but we don't know anything.
Mm-hmm. Except for the fact that they're stuck and they can't leave.
Yep.
Okay, so we cut to Ellis.
Oh, real quick. Just Nadia. She was talking about someone named Nadia.
Yeah.
That's the name of a character from Lost.
Oh, okay.
Just throw that out there.
Another Lost
just
reference.
A little nod.
All right, so Ellis, Christy, and Kenny are with Kelly.
Yeah, they're kind of off to the side having a little powwow.
Christy says that even in a hospital, their operation would take about 15 hours to complete.
Which clearly they can't do brain surgery here.
Yeah, I'm surprised they can't do brain surgery with the little...
The monsters might be able to, but I don't think they're going to convince them to help.
No, you don't think so? Can you help perform brain surgery? Okay, anyway.
Yeah, and they haven't found an others tent with a surgeon in it yet.
Yes. Nope.
Jack's not there. These are all Lost references. I know it's going over your head.
Yes. They come to the conclusion that they have to put her out of her misery. They don't say those words exactly. They talk around it, but they basically all know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Like, how are we going to do it, they say.
Chrissy is basically saying, just pull her off the rod.
Well, they first suggested you have something you can give her. Like, can you just give her some drugs? And she's like, I don't have anything that's going to do that.
Mm-hmm. And then Kenny suggests another way, which, implies just shooting her in the head.
Yeah, and I told you earlier, when he first said that, I kind of thought he meant we're just going to leave her and let the monsters finish her off.
I'm glad that's not what Kenny means. Yeah, and then Christy pretty much undermines that idea right away.
Yeah, she says, I'm not going to let the last thing that she sees be a gun to her head.
And I'm sorry to say, I'm with Kenny here.
Yeah, we've already established that she can't really see anything unless it's right in front of her eyes, so just go up behind her.
Right.
She won't know what's happening.
Right. Talk to her, tell her to imagine...
Look at the flowers!
Right.
That's a Walking Dead one. You probably don't know that reference either.
Gotcha. But, yeah, I mean, that would be the merciful way to go. I don't understand Christy's point of view here. You would rather her be in horrible pain, end her life in terrible pain, which she's clearly going to be if you try to pull her out of that situation, than just end it in seconds and have
I don't
shoot her
know.
in the head.
Either way, it involves, it's quick and there's a hole in her head.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it takes longer to pull her out, and it's a lot more pain, in my view. I think that the merciful way
we'll never know, hopefully, how much pain that is.
Yes, I would personally prefer not to know.
Remember, at this moment, she's saying she's not feeling any pain.
Right.
So,
well, when you start pulling the thing out of her head, then maybe not so much. And she clearly does feel pain when that happens.
Yeah, but at that point, something had switched and she was feeling pain. So,
gotcha.
I don't know. The bottom line is they have to do something, and none of them want to do it. They decide they're going to pull the rod out. And Chrissy's honest with Kelly. She says, yeah, you're going to die.
At this point, though, I made a thread about the whole
humanity
of this. But one person said, why not give why not give Kelly the choice?
Yeah.
Which way
Tell her, here's what's happening.
Which way do you want to die?
What do you want us to do?
Right.
Do you want us to rip this thing out of your head? Do you want us to shoot you? Do you want us to cut your throat open? Do you want us to leave you for the monsters to play with tonight?
And that was pretty much the most convincing comment on that thread that I made. But yeah, so basically, I thought, why not leave the choice to Kelly?
Yeah. And if it was you, you'd say, blow my brains out?
Yeah, I think I would choose that over, trying to, yeah, I think that's the more humane way to go. I think it's quick, it's relatively painless, but I don't know. Okay, so we cut to Tabitha and Julie. They're looking for clothes.
Yeah, they're in the barn, like some storage section of the barn that's full of clothes.
And Julie says that she'd rather be playing with toys with Ethan. Okay, so Julie gets a lot of crap from the fandom. I mean, the Matthews family does in general,
Yeah.
but a lot of people find Julie annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, what do you expect? She's a teenage girl. In this, like in the last episode in particular, she was under the impression that she was going to lose both of her parents.
Right, she'll talk about that in a scene soon. She's in this weird limbo, right? In one case, she's growing up really quickly. Like, we're sitting here theorizing who she could date, right?
Right.
And then she's like, well, my little brother gets to play with toys. Why don't I have that little of responsibility?
Right.
So she's really in a very weird situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's this awkward age where she's both a child and very close to being a grown-up.
Right. And I think the fandom needs to give her just a little bit more slack.
Yeah. The only time I ever got annoyed with her was in the diner. I was just like, you need to step up and say something.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, like, I don't see the problem that people have with this family.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with them. And I think a lot of it is just that fact that we don't have a villain.
Mm-hmm.
People need somebody to hate. And they picked that family.
I guess so.
Like, because there's the monsters. You can hate the monsters, sure. But also, we love the monsters.
Right.
They're fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not going to hate on them that way. And now we have Randall. But...
yeah, I mean, maybe he's going to be the villain of the show. But I think that's just too simplistic of a way to look at things. Like, it's not... That's what I love about the show, is it's not, like, good versus evil.
Right.
It's, like, just people.
It's people versus situation.
Right.
And we don't know what the situation is.
Tell me that you would be in the situation and not acting like some of these characters do.
Right.
Like, so I think they're, like, looking at it from a rational lens when you realize if you're in this situation, you're not always thinking rationally.
There's nothing rational about any of this.
Right. And you have to fight to stay sane at all in this situation.
So Julie thinks it's really weird to be taking dead people's clothes. She's not about this.
Right.
And her mom's like, it's just like going to the thrift store.
Right. A little bit different, but still the same. At least you don't have to pay money for any of this stuff.
Yeah,
it's
so
free.
they pick out a bunch of clothes, and they carry out, like, 2 bags of clothes that they picked for the family, because remember, they have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Although most of the characters in this show just kind of wear the same outfit every day.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how they do laundry. Is there...
Well, we've seen at Colony House, they were doing laundry day, like at the beginning, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When Tabitha first went to the house to see Julie, Julie and Fatima were doing laundry then.
Gotcha.
So,
yeah, okay.
I mean, old school laundry, you just wash it in the creek and hang it up to dry.
Right.
Well, you don't need a creek. They've got running water.
Mm-hmm. So they leave the barn. Outside, Tabitha ends up seeing some creepy dead girls.
She sees 2 kids, and I'm pretty sure the older one's a boy. Everyone keeps calling them 2 girls. It's a male name for the actor, first of all.
So we're misgendering a dead person?
And are they dead? Are they ghosts?
Right.
What are these people?
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that the littler one's a girl. She's got long hair and a dress on, and the other one I think is a boy. He's a little bit older.
I mean, I can't tell. They both look in pretty bad shape. So
this is the same creature that she saw caged in the tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even positive if it was that little girl or if it was a different one. And I meant to check on that.
Actress-wise?
Right, because there were credits.
Yeah.
And I think they're called Ghoulish Child is how they're credited.
Okay.
Like Ghoulish Child 1 and 2. And I wanted to look at the names to see if it was that little girl. And I'm not positive, but even if it's not the same, they're the same. It's the same type of creature.
Mm-hmm.
Which they're not the same as the monsters. That's clear.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same as the boy in white.
Right.
Although they're in white.
Yeah.
So there could be some connection.
Maybe they're the same breed of creature that the boy in white is?
We don't really know. Like, are they ghosts?
Right.
The one in the tunnels seemed pretty there. I don't think that was a vision.
I think you mentioned in the last episode that from her experiences, Tabitha's perceptions has been altered. So now she can actually see these things that maybe were already there.
Right,
in the first
right.
place.
Maybe they were always there and they're just kind of in a different dimension, plane of existence than her. Or are they just projecting themselves to her from wherever they really are? Or are they ghosts that are showing themselves to her?
Right.
But yeah, I felt like the one in the caves had a more physical presence. Like, I feel like they were there. That child threw the ball that knocked over the tower.
They just want to play.
They do. I've seen suggestions that maybe these kids, like, died in a coal mine. And the caves are coal mines, and this was a coal town, like in its history, real life history. It's so hard to talk about this because everything's like, nothing's concrete. None of the words make sense outside of any sentence you're saying. But yeah, like that it's from like an 1800s coal mine, or even early, 20th century. And all these kids are like so dirty from the coal mines. And they died in a fire or something, and that's why their scalps are all kind of messed up and their hair's kind of falling out.
Yeah, they look like they've had better days.
Yeah. And I've also seen people suggest that, they were the students at this school. And
the Christian school that is currently the hospital.
The school that's the clinic, and maybe all of these kids were students there and something happened to them, and like the boy in white, maybe they all wore white at the school as a uniform. Maybe they were in some kind of cult where all the kids were wearing white.
Okay.
Like, I've seen all kinds of stuff floating around. And the bottom line is, these kids are weird, and we have no idea what's going on with them. But we do know that Tabitha's the only one seeing them. Like, these two. I don't know about the caves. I'm not sure if Victor saw that kid or not. I feel like that kid was really there. But these two are just a vision that Tabitha is seeing. Like, Julie doesn't see them.
And it freaks her enough to basically run home. And Julie's wondering, hey, what's going on with you? What's wrong with you? We cut from that to Boyd going to talk to his wife.
Yep, he visits Abby's grave again.
His mission was a failure, and it doesn't take him very long to start losing it.
Yeah. Now, interesting to know, all the things that he wouldn't tell Ellis and couldn't talk about, didn't want to tell Donna, he's telling them to Abby.
Right.
Like, she's his tether, and she's not here anymore.
Right.
She's the one that he's willing to talk to and wants to share everything with her and really wishes she'd give him answers. And maybe kind of feels like she can, because he feels like he has been communicating with her. And he's losing it. He tells her that Ellis is getting married, first of all. And he's like, well, you probably already know that. Like you seem to know more than I do.
Right. I mean, isn't that always the way, though? Even if you're alive, the woman always knows more.
Yeah, probably, because we pay more attention.
Yeah, fair enough.
And he starts questioning, is any of this real? He thinks he's losing his mind. He says, maybe I'm in a coma and you and Ellis are at my bedside and all of this is a dream for me.
Right.
And again, I don't think it's as simple. I don't think like any one character is imagining all of this and it's all the other characters are in their head.
No, if it's some kind of simulation, it's one that they're all involved with.
Yeah.
It's not just one person dreaming it.
Right. I'm pretty sure these are all real people, at least our main characters. Maybe some of the background people are NPCs.
Right. Possibly.
Yeah, he's just, he says it can't be real. Like, he's using a rational brain, like, this dude didn't just disappear. Like, all of these things I'm experiencing are not real. It doesn't make any sense. And he's rational enough to know that this cannot be real, but at the same time, what is it?
Right. Yeah, so he's starting to lose it. This is the clearest sign that he's starting to lose it. Julie, we cut back to Julie and Tabitha. Julie wants to know what's wrong with her mother.
Yeah, they're at the Lou house now.
She denies that there is something wrong, and Julie insists that she tells him and says, look, I spent the night basically assuming that I'm an orphan now.
Yeah, and I have to raise Ethan by myself.
You're dead, and soon my dad is going to be ripped to pieces by monsters.
Right.
So, yeah, you need to tell me what's going on
here. Like, I deserve to know the truth. Like, I'm in this with you.
And she is the only one in this episode that I think is honest. She says, yeah, there's something going on. I saw something that wasn't there.
Yeah, she admits to her about these two kids. And she admits she was having visions before coming to this town. She was seeing visions of the dead baby Thomas. And
so Julie ends up thinking, oh, so you saw Thomas. And like, no, not quite so much.
Yeah, and she said, when I see Thomas, I feel at peace. But this did not feel at peace.
Right. And we're back with Kelly. Kelly says that they are all so nice.
Yeah.
She wants...
And Kelly's nice.
Yeah.
I wish we could spend some more time with Kelly.
Yeah, I would really like to spend a lot of time with Kelly.
Jesus.
She wants her phone to call her mom, but Christy says that there's no way to contact her mom.
Yeah.
But they'll write her...
You remember Christy or Kelly doesn't have a clue, like, where they are, what's going on. Right. She just thinks some crazy people have killed her.
And there's really no reason to explain it to her at this point.
It's not going to help the situation.
She says that they can write a note.
Yeah, Christy says, I got some paper in my bag. We're going to write a note and give it to your mom. And she doesn't have any paper in her bag. Right. Kenny goes to get the paper, and Christy just kind of shakes her head at him like no, there's no paper. Obviously, we can't get a note to her mom. Just pretend like you're writing a note.
Right. So she starts to compose it and starts apologizing.
She tells her mom that I love you and I'm sorry that I didn't give you a hug the last time I saw you.
So there was clearly some kind of conflict there that we're never really going to know about.
It sounded, she said, like they were fighting about Brian.
Well, that problem has been resolved. She starts to get upset for the first time, and then she starts screaming.
She said, what is that?
Right.
Do you hear that? And then Boyd comes. Now listen, a lot of people think that she was screaming because of Boyd. And because
I've read that a lot.
Of the worms in Boyd, and she sensed evil coming, and that's why she's screaming. I do not think that's the case.
No?
I'm fairly convinced that whatever's controlling her induced something in her head where she's hearing something, seeing something, feeling the pain now. Something just was remotely done to her to make her start screaming. The same time Boyd is walking back from Abby's grave so that he would hear her,
right? So
that he would come over. They wanted Boyd to find her.
And that's more or less what Boyd himself
what Boyd gets to later is I think they wanted Boyd to be the one to have to kill her. And by her screaming at that moment while he was walking nearby on the way back from the grave would ensure that he is involved in this situation.
So Boyd ends up happening upon the scene, and he tells Christy, Ellis, and Kenny to leave.
Yeah, he's like, you don't have to be here for this. And Christy's like, sorry, but I'm not leaving. And then nobody leaves. They all kind of huddle around Kelly, and she's screaming. She's clearly in pain now. They're like, we got to do it now.
I don't understand what the urgency... Well, I mean, I guess...
She's in pain.
She's in pain.
She's in pain. Let's end the pain.
But once again, just shoot her in the head and be done with this. Why are they going through this process of pulling her from the rod? Like, it's more painful than it needs to be. But anyway, I'm going to move on from that. They pull out the rod.
Boyd pulls out the rod.
Boyd specifically pulls out the rod, and she dies.
She just collapses down, and her body twitches. And we didn't get to see her head, but it sounded really gross.
Thankfully, I did not want to see that.
Yeah, I saw you made a comment like, I don't want to watch that scene again. And I'm just like, Dave, we're gonna talk about this scene in long detail.
Yeah, I know. But it's not a scene I'm gonna go out of my way to watch again, that's for sure. Christy, upset, returns to Mary and begs her to stay.
Yeah, she's really upset, and she's showing the vulnerability. Remember that Marielle was missing. Like, and this is what she was saying. Like, this is too easy for you. And you can see now that Mary's like, oh, well, this is affecting you. You are still human. Okay.
And Kenny, and Ellis are clearly shaken. Kenny basically looks like he's in shock.
Yeah.
Ellis makes a comment, and I'm not sure why he does. I'm having difficult reading it, but he says, hey, look, the monsters did this. And I'm not sure what he's getting at.
Kenny felt like Kenny might have felt like responsible that we just killed this girl.
Right. Like,
she was alive and now she's not.
I mean, yeah. It's not rational, but then again, like I said, you can't always expect rationality in these type of situations.
Yeah. And Kenny tells Ellis he's going to go to the church. He's going to look through Father Cautry's things to see if he can find a passage to read at the service because they got a lot of dead bodies they have to bury.
Right. So we cut to Fatima and Ellis at the diner. Fatima's already there. Ellis wanders in, and he ends up sitting with her and saying, hey, how you doing? Fatima makes him promise it won't always be like this. Ellis says that they should just get married.
Yeah, he says, I know we were going to wait, but let's not wait any longer. Let's get married, like, right now.
he doesn't want the place to determine when they get to be happy. Plus, there's a chance that they might never leave.
Right.
Really,
Because remember, when he proposed, they thought they were going home.
Right. She ends up accepting the proposal, and she gets really happy, and they both share a lovely moment together of actually being happy for the.
Yeah.
This is the only moment of happiness I can even recall in this episode. That's pretty grim for the most part. These people are not in good shape mentally. That's for sure. Ethan is building a tower, one that resembles the ones in the cave.
Yeah, with some wooden block game that Mrs. Lou gave him from storage at the diner.
And Tabitha wants to talk to him about the fact that, look, I know you feel like you're on a quest, but... And then he just basically fills in the blanks.
She's trying to give him a lesson, but he's like, Mom, like, I know it's dangerous. I know it's not just a game. He's like, I'm a smart kid.
Right.
And they all need to really, really, like, just give Ethan more acknowledgement. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he knows things. He's on top of this.
Right.
He's fine.
Right. But they're going to ignore him because he's a kid, basically. So she ends up noticing for the first time what he's actually building.
And it took her way too long to notice.
I would have noticed it right away.
The second we saw that tower, I was like, oh. I mean, we already knew we saw it in promotional photos, but like, oh, damn. Like... Now, she must not have been paying attention to the previously on segment because they even showed us that that's something we need to remember.
There's a Facebook poster that brought up what that tower actually meant.
Yes.
I wish
I didn't know.
No?
I didn't capture any of that. But, like, yeah, there is a name for that type of structure. And
there was a history
it's got, like, some... I want to say, like, Native American type. Mm-hmm. Actually, I think it was a Canadian thing, but, same difference.
And I think...
like, some Native callback to what that means symbolically.
And I think it had something to do with hunters as well in the meaning. But, unfortunately, I didn't write any of that down, so I couldn't really, actually tell you.
To me, it's just kind of really creepy, this whole structure. And... And what it means to her is she's like, wait, those little kids is who knocked that down. And then suddenly she sees them again, those two from before. Yep.
Tabitha also has flashbacks to the cave when that thing fell down.
Yeah, and we're seeing that moment of recognition for her in case we missed it, which we didn't, but some people might have.
Right.
What she's, experiencing right now is that she made that connection between the stone tower in the tunnel and this wooden block tower now.
And she sees the little girls, or one little girl and one boy, I guess.
The ghoulish children.
And she runs into the house with Ethan.
Yeah, she pulls him. She's like, we got to go in now. And again, we're confronted with the fact that Ethan can't see these kids. Mm-hmm. Only she can see them. So even though he can see the boy in white, he can't see these kids.
Now, did you see the picture of the promotion?
Yes,
did you see that?
There's a behind-the-scenes shot of Ethan's actor, whose name escapes me, with these two kids playing the ghoulish children, and they're all just kind of like hanging out. It was funny.
I was like, I don't know, Ethan. Maybe you should find someone else to play with.
The two kids are making like their scary faces.
Yeah.
And they've got Crocs on their feet.
Mm-hmm.
And
modern day Crocs.
Yeah, and I showed it to Adam. He's like, why do they have that? And I was like, because they're not running around set all day barefoot.
Right.
Their characters are barefoot, but like...
Right. No, that's not actually part of the show. They aren't wearing Crocs in the actual show. That's just a promotional photo. And yeah, I really enjoyed that picture. Okay, so we cut to Donna and Boyd.
Donna's in the greenhouse, and she's having a real tough time of it. You can tell she's very, very frazzled.
Yeah, she's frustrated with the plants for some reason. And Boyd comes in.
Remember, she's trying to save the crops. The food's really short. She's trying to do some gardening. She drops one of them and breaks the planter, and she's fumbling.
Mm. Boyd comes in, and Donna's like, well, I guess you had a crap day, too.
Yeah. And remember the relationship between these two. Like, they have this really amazing relationship, and then they also had this thing where they were very opposed to each other. They had very different viewpoints, but they have a respect for each other.
Right. And I think that respect has actually grown.
Yeah, they are.
Especially in Boyd's absence.
Are like really two people that can confide in each other, that may be on a level that they can't confide with anybody else.
Right. So Boyd ends up telling her about Kelly and what he had to do. Mm-hmm. And he makes this connection.
You can see that she's reminded of her sister during this conversation, talking about, how they wanted to play with her and made her watch.
And he basically ends up telling this story.
He tells a story, yeah.
About how...
his first tour of Iraq.
he ended up driving over in a
IED.
bomb, IED.
An IED, a bunch of people die, and there was this kid there from Wisconsin, and they called him Smuckers because this kid loved jelly, and the shrapnel basically ripped his body in half, and Boyd was holding him in his arms and watched him die, and this is the first person he saw die in his life.
And, wow.
All choked up over it.
Yeah, I lost my voice. Okay, so this person ends up being Brian Kelly.
Yeah, their name it's Corporal Brian Kelly was this kid that died in his arms.
And Boyd is making this connection and freaking out about it.
Yeah, that I just, had to kill Kelly with my hands, and her boyfriend's name is Brian, and
right.
He says that can't be a coincidence.
And Donna starts to ask him, hey, like, what the heck happened to you?
Yeah.
And Boyd starts to walk away and like, no. You're not dropping that crap on me and then just walking out. Like, we need to talk. If you don't want to talk about, what happened to you, fine. But I need to know that you were okay.
Yeah, she says, I need to know that you're back.
Right.
And basically she's saying, I can't be the leader.
Right. I was the leader and I got a bunch of people killed.
And, she says, these people can't take anymore, and I don't know if I can take anymore.
Right.
And we need you.
Mm-hmm.
We need you to step out of whatever the heck you're dealing with and be here for this community.
So these two scenes between the two of them, the one earlier and this one, made me have much more respect for Donna. I mean, I I've always liked the character, but I also like the fact that she's very introspective about what happened in these couple of episodes.
Right. She totally blames herself.
Right. And
for not handling the situation well.
Some of it is fair, and some of it not.
Yeah.
Like, I think the blowing out the tire thing with the shotgun was a mistake. I said that in that episode. I don't really have an issue with the way she handled herself in the diner. Like,
yeah.
I don't see what else she could have done. I know that you had some mild criticisms about maybe you should try explaining more, but...
I had some criticisms that people weren't, like the townspeople weren't coming together to back up each other's stories.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I really don't see what else she could have done in that situation other than what she did. Like, once they were in the diner itself. So, yeah, she didn't handle herself completely well, but at the same time, even if Boyd were involved in that situation, people were going to die no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that this
You weren't
situation...
going to save everyone.
Right.
There were just too many people that
you
needed to convince.
Mm-hmm. And, human nature being what it is, people were not all going to buy into this, and people were going to die. It's just a fact.
Right.
And I love the scene between the two of them because it's really well acted. And, she basically tells him, hey, look, I need you. And he suddenly decides, okay, he's going to put on the brave face. That makes me really worried about him.
Yeah.
Boyd really needs confidence.
He needs to talk about it. And the only person he's talked to about it is his dead wife.
Right.
Which isn't going to help him
and
through this.
I think in this situation, Donna is the one he should be talking to about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to think, like, who did Boyd talk to before about these things? And
Father Cautry.
Right. And now,
that was his confidant.
And now he's dead. So now he basically has no one.
And we've seen in the season preview, he is going to have conversations with Father Cautry at some point this season.
Right. Are those going to be flashbacks or current day?
I'm fairly certain they're like hallucination or dream conversations.
So it's going to be kind of his way of coping, is like imagining him being there. I mean, he could actually
I'm
be
pretty
there
sure that's what it is.
Is
because in that scene in the trailer, he's like, "This isn't real."
Right.
Like he's like, "I know you're not really here."
Yeah. And I mentioned in the first episode that that episode demonstrated how much the town needs Boyd, and I'm glad that Donna herself recognizes that. I'm glad she recognizes where she went wrong, though I think she's being a tad hard on herself.
Yeah.
And I'm also glad that she realizes that the town needs Boyd.
Also, remember, other than Victor, she's been here longer than anybody. She's been here for 3 years.
You're right.
Like, that's a lot. She's seen a lot of people come and die.
Yeah.
And she's been a leader, of Colony House for 2 years.
Yeah.
And, one person can only take so much.
Right. I mean, like, yeah.
And a lot's happened in the last week.
Eventually, she's going to crack up. But, like, I'm really worried about Boyd. Like, beyond the worm situation, I'm worried about him psychologically if he doesn't find somebody to talk to about what he's going through.
Right.
Because, he is not Superman.
Remember,
he can only take so much.
He was talking to Ellis, and as far as, Sarah, Ellis is the only person that knows Sarah's alive at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he was talking to him about that, but yeah, and I think next week we're going to get to see, he's going to be forced to face some of these things and give some answers to people.
Yeah.
And I hope he comes clean about everything, and I hope we can have some real conversations about the stuff that's going on.
He can't, I think, lying about the situation and not admitting the full truth would be a mistake. Yeah. It's the wrong way to go.
I mean, at least talk to Victor about Martin, because he probably knows who he is.
Right. Maybe.
Everybody needs to talk to Victor. We need to have an intervention and talk to Victor, because Victor has answers. He's been here for 30 freaking years.
Right.
Or longer, 40 years. I don't know. How many years has he been here? A long time.
I've seen a Facebook post that I meant to bring up earlier that someone suggested that Victor just doesn't like men. That he's extra standoffish with, other men.
I think he's kind of extra standoffish with everybody.
But he seems to be a little bit softer with women.
Tabitha?
Yeah.
He was accepting a Tabitha, but remember the boy in white told him to wait for Tabitha.
He was also somewhat nice to Julie at the same time. In episode 7 last season.
I'm trying to remember his interactions with Julie. Oh, she went to his room and was like, I need to be alone, so I'm coming to your room.
And he was kind of softer to her. So I think he has a big problem with men for some reason.
Okay.
And that's why I think maybe, Jade isn't going to be able to get answers out of him, because...
Yeah, I mean, Victor's very guarded, and I don't blame him for that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, someone suggested that, and I think that's a reasonable theory. So maybe, Jade needs to bring around Julie or Tabitha or something to get actual answers out of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so...
But the person most likely to get answers out of him is Ethan.
Yeah.
But Ethan's also the person no one's going to listen to either.
Right. You bring Ethan along and, you have to have someone else there to, witness it.
To listen to it.
Right.
Otherwise, they're not going to listen to anything Ethan says. Ethan can tell you the exact answer, and no one's going to listen to him.
Right. All right, so we cut to Kenny.
And he's in the church.
Yeah, and he hears a noise in the basement. He pulls out his gun, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, Kenny's going to die. That's the vibe I got from this.
I saw people say that, but I didn't get that.
Right. I mean, I think it might be the horror movie thing.
Yeah, but I was thinking, why are you going to go in that basement? Could there be a monster down there, even though it's daytime?
Right.
I'm not going to investigate a sound by myself in this world.
Now, maybe it's just me, but I could have sworn I saw some things in that basement that resembled some of the things that were in the tunnels.
I didn't pick up on that, but I will look at that.
It wasn't in great detail, but it kind of looked like some of those things were similar. And then we see
her.
Yes, Sarah. After 3 episodes of not seeing her, we finally see her, and this is so bad for Boyd. This is the worst way for her to show up.
Yeah.
He basically she says, "Hi, Kenny." And that's where the episode ends.
And I find it really interesting that Kenny's the one who found her.
Yeah.
So out of everybody, Kenny has the most reason to kill her.
Right.
But being who he is, Kenny's not going to just shoot her and kill her.
No, I'd imagine
Kenny's the least liked person to pull a trigger on anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the one with the grudge to hold. He knows she killed his dad. She's the one responsible for his dad dying. And, Tabitha is going to want her dead because she tried to kill her son. That mama bear is going to come out. And we know from, the previews of the next episode that...
You saw the preview?
I saw people posted the preview.
Okay.
We see in the preview Kenny telling Boyd she has to go in the box. So even though Kenny's not going to pull the trigger, he's going to be like, we have to uphold the law and kill her because... I have this grudge against her, and she's evil, and she tried killing people.
And I find it hard
and did kill people.
Right. I find it hard to imagine Boyd being able to talk his way out of that situation without revealing everything.
Right. He has to reveal everything. This town needs to have a group meeting.
Mm-hmm.
A really big one. They need to talk.
Right.
Because I bet you they have all the answers they need if everybody freaking communicated with each other.
Right.
Yeah, I bet you some nobody in the corner knows some giant piece of the puzzle that's going to help everybody.
Right.
That we don't even know yet, because we didn't see their scenes.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's going to be a very interesting episode next week. I find it hard to believe that they're going to bring Sarah back after missing her for a couple of episodes just to kill her in the next episode.
No, I don't think they're going to just kill her. I don't see her going in the box. Maybe she runs away again. Maybe I mean I don't know where it's gonna go, but yeah, it's definitely not looking good. And I think Kenny and Boyd's relationship's gonna
it's definitely gonna
be
hit.
strained because because Boyd kept this from him.
Right.
I mean, maybe if he had been honest with Kenny and told him she was alive and told him, I'm taking her with me as a prisoner, but I need her and we'll deal with her later, maybe Kenny would have been on board if you had just been honest with him.
And I think that's a big problem with these people.
Yeah, and the only person who knew was Ellis, and he only knew by accident.
Right.
Boyd wasn't going to tell anybody, so they all just really need to talk to each other more. Like, literally every character needs to communicate better.
Right.
And if they did, I think that they'd be in a lot better place.
Oh, absolutely.
And they all have so many secrets. Like, everybody does.
So, yeah, next week should be interesting.
So I posed a second question to Twitter regarding Sarah. Gotcha. Remember, this is something we talked about last week. I said, does Sarah have the worms?
Okay.
People were, this was a question.
That was something I brought up.
Is the thing that happened with her arm, like, was that evidence that she's got worms just like Boyd does, or is that something totally different?
Okay.
I'm on the side of it's something different. The poll results came back perfectly even 50-50.
That's funny.
We got no tip in any direction.
Okay.
So we're no closer to figuring that out. Obviously something's going on with Sarah, but I don't think that it's worms. I don't think it's anything like what Boyd's going through. I'm pretty sure what he's dealing with is unique to him as far as any of the characters we know.
Gotcha.
I saw a lot of people think that Victor has them.
I don't think we've seen any evidence of that, though.
No, but Victor always has long sleeves on, always has his arms covered. And he seemed knowing of what he saw.
He was looking directly at Boyd in the previous episode.
And a lot of people think that the worms is protecting Boyd now. That's why the monsters didn't, bother with him in the woods. And maybe that's why Victor's been able to live so long, because he has the worms and the monsters are leaving him alone because of it. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's something that something to keep our eyes on. Okay. Again, nobody trusts anybody.
Right.
And nobody should.
I wouldn't trust anybody in this situation.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, anybody can be a bad guy. Anybody can be
secretly evil.
Anybody can be the maker of this town or in with the monsters or anything. Yeah. And they might not even know it, to be honest. Right. Anybody could be on any side of this and not even have knowledge of who they are and what their role is.
Based on the video game theory, then that would suggest that that any one of them could be the maker and just not have any memories of it whatsoever.
Right. The only other note I have was the title, which we kind of talked about this already throughout our discussion. But obviously the direct tether meant Kelly's tethered to this tree.
Yeah.
But as I brought up, it also means those things that tether you to reality. Those things that, as Boyd was talking to Ellis about, that thing that keeps you, that keeps you sane. And, Boyd told Ellis he needs to be that for Fatima. Christy's tether was the rock. I think maybe this violin is some sort of tether for Victor, and that's why he was so upset that it was missing, is because this is some remembrance of his life outside of here.
Gotcha.
And I think Boyd's tether is Abby's grave. Like she's his rock. He's gonna go to her even though she's not there anymore. That's still what he's holding on to is her memory, and she's the only person he can communicate with. And those are all just kind of different ways to tether yourself. And speaking of that whole Inception connection, wasn't that a point in that movie as well? Is you need an object?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Like you have to have an object that's your tether to reality. And I don't remember exactly, but
it was a totem. Basically, only you know how it feels, what it weighs, what it does, how it acts.
And so that's how you're going to know if you're dreaming or not, is by interacting with your object. And it's kind of a tether. You're tethered to reality.
Yeah.
So that fits well with that.
By the way, all-time great movie, that Inception. It's one of my favorite movies. Christopher Nolan. I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan. So if you haven't watched that movie, I would highly recommend going and check it out. Do you have any other thoughts about this episode?
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll think of more things to say before the next episode. I'll start on my first page of notes right away.
Yep. 3 hours later, we can talk about episode 4. All right. So
This isn't as long as I thought. We're just a little over 2 hours.
Yeah,
I thought we were going to be closer to 3 today, so I don't think we did bad.
no. All right. So we would like to hear from you.
All of your thoughts, your theories, your ideas. Do you agree with the things we said? Do you disagree? Let us know everything.
Yeah, you can either do it in the comments, you can reach out to Stacie or myself. Basically, any way that you want to communicate, you can try to get in touch with us and communicate your theories. Stacie can be reached at...
I can be reached on Twitter at TVN Coupon Talk. And if you're in the Facebook groups, because we're communicating a lot more, I think, on Facebook with this show than Twitter. Dave and I are both in all of the Facebook groups. I'm Stacie Wilcox, Dave Corman. You'll see us talking about everything, so reach out to us there as well.
And if you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this podcast, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.